In 1972, Dr. Jolly West of the CIA, who was Jack Ruby's doctor at the time of the trial for shooting Lee Harvey Oswald, had moved out to California to the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute, where they planned a center for the study and reduction of violence. This is Ronald Reagan's baby, and if he gets to be president, you can be sure they'll pull this one out again, out of the woodwork. This was planned in 1972, and the plans were submitted to the California Department of Health in Sacramento in April of 1973. And I'd written an article about this Neuropsychiatric Institute, exposed it as being part of the CIA, and said that it would involve third world people, it would involve the poor, the prisoners, the Indians, and I had a pamphlet here from a demonstration about this experience. It said, will the violence be against our children, third world people, women, prisoners, sexual minorities, and such as homosexuals and gays or lesbians, mental patients, and you? What is happening? I had asked about Jolly West, and I had some questions to answer. Well, a group of us got a hold of the presentation papers in Sacramento for the funding for this institute, this Neuropsychic Institute at UCLA, which came really under LEAA, Health, Education, and Welfare, but they wanted some California money also. And one of the studies that was to be done was an S.M. Heilig, H-E-I-L-I-G, doesn't even say doctor, he's got an M.S.W., who wanted to study trends in self-directed violence and find out why there's so many suicides among young. And one of the studies was to work on suicide. Another was on violence in hyperkinetic children, and they would have child guidance clinics and study school-age children who suffer from this, in quotes, condition. Doesn't say anything about the parents being drugged or divorced or poverty or no jobs, unemployment, 10 or 12 to a room, television night and day, high sugar, white flour diet, if anything. They were to study these children, and one of the plans was to take mass amount of youth from the Los Angeles area and use them for experimentation and compare them to other children, normal children, as against hyperkinetic children, or suicidal people as against non-suicidal. Sidney Cohn, who's on television all the time, an MD, was to study LSD and psychopharmacological effects of marijuana, heroin, and so forth. Another study was the prediction of violence. Now, this was the important thing. They were going to take well people and guess whether they had the potential for violence. American Indians, poor blacks, women. They were to do a study that I have here on whether women are violent when they menstruate. And they were to take cult murders. This is one of the subjects. A Dr. Jivan Tabibian, a Ph.D., not an MD, was to study skyjackings, cult murders, and violence by fanatics. They had a long list of subjects that they were going to study, and among them were the possibilities that this Jonestown was moved down. When I read the parallel of studies of mass suicide, former drug addicts, women, black, potentially violent, deprived, good cross-section of women, sexual fantasies and problems, which is what he instilled in them, telling them they had to be homosexuals, and then they could study it. I thought this outline of what they planned in 1972 and 73 was interesting, in lieu of the fact that so many welfare children were sent from a continuation school in the San Francisco area in Oakland down to Jonestown. They were given to Jim Jones, this fanatic, this racist, bigot, torturer, man filled with sexual fantasies and fears, in quotes, problem children from the Bay Area, and all these people came from the Bay Area, were shipped down there. Now, means a handful of people, demonstrated up in Sacramento and fought this school, this neuropsychiatric study that was supposed to center on violence. This was in 1973, but it began to be started in 1972. And then in 1974, the Committee of the Judiciary of the United States Senate, and I've given you the address on the printed sheet, had a inquiry into individual rights and the federal role in human behavior, a book of 648 pages. And a good hunk of that book has to do with that UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute. And one of the things Sam Ervin wanted to know, Senator Sam Ervin, He wrote a letter, I want to know whether Dr. William Sweet, Dr. Vernon Mark, or Dr. Frank Irvin will perform any work at UCLA project. I understand that Dr. Sweet and Irvin are now associated with the Neuropsychiatric Institute of UCLA and that they're closely aligned with types of projects to be conducted. Their work in the past has raised questions with regard to the constitutional right of the subjects of their experiments. Now, Doctors Vernon Mark and Dr. Frank Irvin and Dr. William Sweet went on the theory that the reason the blacks rioted in Newark and Detroit in 1967 is that there's something in the black makeup that causes some blacks to violence and others don't, and they began brain experiments and electrode implants at Boston Hospital in Massachusetts after the 67-68 riots. They began experimenting mental programs on blacks of all kinds and poor to see what makes them trigger off or how can we keep them happy. And then they moved out to UCLA to start working with his Neuropsychiatric Institute. Now, one of the things that was so frightening about that institute was the fact that they wanted a secret base, which reminds me very much of Jonestown. Incidentally, one of the coordinators of this neuropsychiatric project was James Fisk, a former high-ranking officer in the Los Angeles Police Department, who was linked to the criminal conspiracy section that Louis Tackwin had talked about and was teaching political science at UCLA. On page 357 of this book, I'll give you some quotations in the printed sheet, or give you the full letter. There's a letter by Dr. Louis Jolyon West, who is also identified at the time of the Senator Church hearings in 1976 as positively working with the CIA. He had written to J.M. Stubblebine. Mr. Stubblebine, at the time we were protesting this institute, was head of state California Department of Mental Health. And he had written to Dr. Stubblebine, and he said, Dear Stubb, I am in possession of confidential information to the effect that the Army is prepared to turn over Nike missile bases to the state and local agencies for non-military purposes. They may look with special favor on health-related applications. Now, this is the federal Army that has missile bases, Nike missile bases, that they would turn over to the mental health department, and a CIA doctor, Dr. West, who was working with men who were experimenting on blacks, poor blacks, Indians, children, and women, and they would give them this property. Such a Nike missile base is located in the Santa Monica Mountains, within a half-hour's drive of the Neuropsychiatric Institute. That's UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. It is accessible, but relatively remote. Does that remind you of Jonestown? That is accessible. It's on a river. Boats came and go. Open harbor for weapons, medications, drugs, people visiting, but remote. It has its own airstrip, and the people in Guyana hardly knew the place existed after this came down and removed from Georgetown. And this Neuropsychiatric Institute would remove from Los Angeles proper. He said it's accessible, but it's remote. This site is securely fenced, includes various buildings and improvements, makes it suitable for prompt occupancy. If this site is available to the Neuropsychiatric Institute as a research facility, perhaps as an adjunct to our new Center for the Prevention of Violence, we could put it to very good use. We could make comparative studies that would be carried out there in an isolated but convenient location of experimental or model programs for the alteration of undesirable behavior. Now, this is important because Jim Jones was always telling them they were bad, that they were naughty, that they were guilty. They had to write letters if they didn't like his place and go to the United States. They were stripped and punished. Children were thrown down wells and put under water till they almost drowned. They were put under boards and locked up from 1 to 6 days under floorboards, empty, hollow spaces. They were put. They were told they were naughty and bad, and they had undesirable behavior, and they punished them. They used forms of punishment and drugs. Dr. Jolly West, such programs might include the control of drug or alcohol abuse or modification of chronic antisocial or impulsive aggression. Now, Jim Jones diagnosed these people as having sometimes chronic antisocial behavior. They couldn't eat dinner if they worked 12 hours a day. until he gave a sermon and then told them they could eat. If he gave a sermon for 6 hours, they had to listen. If they objected, they were antisocial. They couldn't have male and female boy or girlfriends. They had to stay apart, sexually deprived, deprived of food, deprived of sleep. They simply worked all day. This is the work crew, the slaves, 14 people in those rooms, 10 by 12. And then if they behaved in a way that was impulsive or aggressive, they could be drugged and tested. And the purpose of this program in the Santa Monica Mountains, given by a military base, was to check antisocial behavior, impulsive aggressiveness. Dr. Jolly West went on and said the site could be an accommodation for conferences or retreat for instructions of selected groups of mental health-related professionals or other law enforcement personnel, parole officers, and special educators for whom demonstrations and participation would be effective modes of instruction. Now, this was written by Dr. Jolly West January 22nd, 1973, when they were going to get the Nike bases to test these poor people and deprivations and call in people for conferences. And that's why when I started this tape, I told you Mark Lane said the doctors came from everywhere. It was a model medical clinic. After the murders came down of 914 people at least, they found syringes, needles, drugs, poisons, and it was a huge medical clinic.
A huge medical clinic. Context of white supremacy. Gus T, Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, November 28, 2024. So I have been told, generally for Thursdays, unless I am gallivanting around California, we do the book club. Schedule has been all out of whack. Not even doing the book club today. But next Thursday, next month, due December right back to the book club. I even researched the book club while in California, which you already knew, right? Because we did do some of the book club while I was in California. We did the section where Andre Bloom discusses the influence of C.O.W.S, and I said because I was at Cal-Berkeley, I was able to get C.O.W.S' autobiography. They don't have that at the University of Washington. I was able to scan the whole book. My research continued. Palo Alto, Stanford University, William Shockley. Dr. Welsing's nemesis. If you didn't hear that broadcast with Malcolm Harris, we talked about his book Palo Alto way back, beginning of this year, March. William Shockley, major figure in that book, all about Silicon Valley and the history of California, specifically the history of California, and then specifically tied to the area Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, San Francisco. When we talked to Malcolm Harrison, he said, man, if it wasn't Dr. William Shockley to come along with all those ideas of eugenics, dysgenics, and we gotta control the Negro, and they're dangerous and ignorant, and what we gonna do with the Negro? If it wasn't William Shockley, it would have been somebody else classified as white. Stanford. So much information down in Palo Alto about, what can I say, a variety of things. And again, Dr. William Shockley, that is, the kind of the genesis for the whole institution, and they have so much information down that what they're just studying, controlling the Negro. They have so much information on all kinds of Negras at Stanford University. They got boxes and boxes and boxes of files. You would think we were in the Congo on the murder of Patrice Lumumba and the involvement of white people all over the world in the murder of Patrice Lumumba. How much information do they? It would be hard to count. I know they have so much information. They have whole folders, chunky, just on Andre Bloom. Probably more than that, but just on Andre Bloom. Got all that as well. Man, white people are not ignorant about that. Is laughable. Like, if you want to, like, distill some lessons. What did you get from oh my God. White people are not ignorant about racism. It is one thing to say that Mr. Fuller and white people get in trouble with other white. It is very different. How many boxes of information do you have on white people killing Patrice Lumumba? Who knows? How many boxes of information do you have on the People's Temple? Who knows? White people are not ignorant about racism, white supremacy. Get that out your mind like forever. And to the converse, Negras, we, the non-white people, particularly the people, myself, classified as black, we are out of this world ignorant, out of this world ignorant, out of this world. Like, turn the television off. I don't ever want to talk to a black person about television again. Never, never, ever. We're never talking about TV again. Wow. It is one thing to, wow, we're ignorant, and then to see the amount of information that white people can stockpile about anything, anyone, you, me. And then we want to sit around and talk about Can I give you 2 times where TV popped up in all of this? 2 times. I post online. I didn't do the program because with so much information, I was literally overwhelmed with data. I took the same mentality that I had here in Washington State researching Jonestown to get 3,000 files. Remember, I said, anything with Jonestown on it, it's mine, belongs to me. If it's got Jonestown, People's Temple, it's mine. I'm supposed to have that. It's mine. Okay. Creator says, try that in California. See how long before you get tired. Whew. It is one thing to think they probably have a lot of information about this in California. It is very different. Wow. And then exactly what type of information do white people have about Jonestown? Black people are stupid. All of us. Turn off the television. There's no talking about TV. I don't care what television program comes on, Netflix, Hulu, even if it's about Jonestown. Nope. Nope. Turn all of that off. Do some serious studying. How did I end up getting to California, even for reals? The book club. Man, and to think that's happened at least twice now because of something we read on the book club. Motivated Gus T to go to Buffalo last year, and then because of something we read on the book club, Gus T spends over a month in California. Greatest travel experience of my life. I don't even think it's close, and I really had to sit with that for a minute. It's like, well, dang, it's not like you've never traveled. But like, I have left the country repeatedly and went to Hawaii for months, not a day or two, for months. No contest. And I lived in California. I didn't even go anywhere that, I got to scratch something off my... I've been to all these places before. LA, San Francisco, Berkeley. Nothing new. Palo Alto, I guess I could put that up there. Palo Alto. I had not been to Stanford before, so that's about the only one that I could add to say, oh, haven't been there. Or I hadn't been to UCLA and hadn't been to USC. I had been to LA before, but those two schools specifically I had not visited, so there was, all in all, this was not going to a new country or whatever, but wow. The learning, the experience, all of it, wow. Get those two TV experiences, and then I'll try and see if I can sum up as we munch on some turkey and giblets and all the rest of it. My one television experience, November 18, Oakland, Evergreen Cemetery. 46 years to the day of the Jonestown massacre and the assassination of Congressman Leo Ryan, Supervisor Harvey, just Leo Ryan, Milk Moscone, that's later. That was November 27, yesterday. But I'm at the cemetery on November 18. Black male. He starts off, he's looking at the memorial, he's reading it, because it says Guyana Relief Fund. He says, where is Guyana? I said, it's in South America. Even paused the insert. I heard that many times while I was in California from white people and non-white people. Where is Guyana? I even responded when some of the people said that. Now, I said, now, hey, it's 2025 and you got an iPhone and you don't know where Guyana is. Now I want you to imagine, rewind 50 years, there's no internet. Hey, it's about 5 TV channels. CNN doesn't even exist. Neither does ESPN. Now imagine that, and you're 15. Now imagine you. Where's Guyana? Siri, where is... Anyway, black male at the cemetery. Says, oh, South America, oh, okay. He says, oh, you're the journalist. Do we have any questions we should ask you? Not here for answering questions. Any hoodles. We move forward, and he immediately shifts like he doesn't have anything to say about Jonestown, People's Temple, none of that. Did he lose, relatives in all of this? What motivated him to come? None of that. Man, did you see that Mike Tyson fight? Oh, I wanted him to drop that uppercut, and man, you get in there and drop him, and I was so disappointed, and they didn't. Brother Mike, we miss you. I didn't watch the fight. I was aware that it was happening, but mostly I just thought, man, doesn't he have enough brain damage for when didn't we start all this talking about neuroscience? I was trying to go to the brain science convention last year. I've seen enough of black people getting brain damage. I mean, come on now. But he continued it wasn't just going to be a quick passing. Yeah, it's a shame, and I sure was rooting for old brother Mike and glad he didn't chomp nobody's ear, and we move on. No, he wanted to sit and talk with the boxing. But now I'm hearing other people are drifting to talk about Jonestown and such. I said, are you serious? Well, look here, brother. I'm going to have to talk to you and show you sad about Mike. Hope he doesn't fight anymore. Brain damage is not a good thing. Have a good day. Then I went to go talk about the thing. Jonestown, not the thing. Second time television popped up in all of this. I locate multiple books about a variety of topics related to Jonestown that I had not heard of prior to going to California. That's why you go to the epicenter of the research, find all kinds of goodies. I share. I'm not even stingy about this. I post the title immediately to one of the books I found because I was so stunned. Like, what in the world? Matter of fact, the book title tells you everything. The Guyana murders. Uh-oh. Nobody calls this murder. They all say suicide and these wacky niggers that killed themselves. So immediately, uh-oh, Guyana murders. What? What? Then find out this book, the whole premise is this was some sort of CIA project. Whoa. Whoa. This book is in the California Berkeley Library, specifically in the special collections, which means you have to have government identification. You have to make a request online. You can't leave the facility with the book. You have to read it under white surveillance at the facility. But you can photocopy it, which I did. They also have this book at the San Francisco Main Public Library downtown, right off Market Street. I'd been there before. Now I went there with a purpose. On the 6th floor, same stipulations. You can't check this book out. You can only read this book on the 6th floor of the library under white surveillance with government-issued identification. You can take photocopies of the book, but it is under surveillance. And this book isn't even out on the shelves in either location, like it's buried in the catacombs. You'd have to find it in the catalog and then make a request and have white people go get the book for you. They have multiple books like that, meaning books that suggest Jonestown was a CIA project where it's the same procedure. Government ID, under surveillance, can't check it out, gotta read it there, blah, 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 blah. None of these books are, was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? So I go to post online. What sort of things did you find in all this? Was it worth 30 days and disrupting the broadcast schedule and all this time and money and blah, blah, blah? Share one of these wacky books that I didn't have before going to California. Black person with Philadelphia Eagles avatar. That's more brain damage. Professional football. What do you mean Jonestown is a CIA medical experiment? What are you talking about? I can't even, man. Like, the people that come, the individuals classified as black, you spend your time watching football, tackle football, professional wrestling, Mike Tyson, Hulk Hogan. I don't care what it is. Don't you come talking to me about nothing. Turn all that off and get serious. I do not care nothing about no Mike Tyson, no Eagles, Jalen Hurts. I don't care if they lose every game the rest of the year. Saquon Barkley. I don't care if he gains another yard. Replace white supremacy with justice. And I responded to the fellow. I said, man, there are things way more important than the Philadelphia Eagles. And I posted the other book, was Jonestown, a CIA medical experiment. Now you have two books that suggest this was a CIA medical experiment. And I hit him with the same thing I hit everybody with. Hey, man, turn off the football. There was a congressional inquiry about Jonestown CIA activity, homie. Don't talk to me about no entertainment. Replace white supremacy with justice. That's the same reason we don't read no fiction in the book club. I would not have gone to California if we read fiction. Ugh. Anyway, 2 TV experiences, no TV, replace white supremacy with justice. Now, robust thank you to all of the investors who even made it possible for broke black male Gus T to go to California. Man, we had folks, they could have saved and, had fried turkey, extra fried turkey for Thanksgiving, extra bucket of chitlins next month for Christmas. Anything, Corona could come back, anything. Warm vacation to Florida, anything, and they invested for Gus T to hang out in California for over a month. Longest time I've been out of Washington State since I have lived here. Wacky, stressful. Much obliged to everyone. Man, I even had to have support because I really did not want to go. Like, I don't know how many people, if you have to do a lot of traveling for really any reasons. Business travel, especially something where you're working, you're not just, lounging by the pool, kicking it at the beach, that sort of thing. Especially, but it's going to be long. You're going to be gone for weeks, over a month, that sort of thing. That is stressful, to be gone, especially gone out of your state, like you're not even close to where you reside. In a system of white supremacy racism, I am a privileged, toxic black male. It is difficult for me to be out in public, even in my beloved Seattle, Washington. In a system of white supremacy racism, I call this the plantation all the time. It's difficult for me to go to the grocery store without being accosted and accused of something, anything, even amongst other non-white people. So much less to be, wow, we were in LA like 1,000 miles practically from your home residence, and even San Francisco, that's not 1,000 miles, but I mean, that's like a 2-hour flight. It's not close. And even within all of that, for the past almost 30 days while I was in San Francisco, my daily activities, I can give you the breakdown. Like, I spent 8 days at Stanford, Palo Alto. That is 40 miles from my hotel in San Francisco. I spent 7 days at Cal-Berkeley. That is across the bay in San Francisco. Just that alone, where I was explaining to people, you go out in your day, unless people, have commutes. I realize some people do, but it is very different if you go out and you have a tiff or disagreement, or even if you don't feel well, you get tired, you get hungry, whatever, and you want to go get a nap or just go home and start fresh the next day. That is a little different when you are a 40-mile train ride from the hotel room. Or even you got to trek back across the bay to get back to the hotel room, which was the case for about half of the days that I was in San Francisco. Like, woof. It was a all-day counter-racist grind every day, which was part of the reason it was not like, woo, I'm so excited. I did not want to go. I am a homebody. That is something that was really emphasized the whole time I was gone. Like, I enjoy being in the house with my smoothies, cooking. That's what I enjoy. I do not enjoy globe-trotting in a system of white supremacy racism where loonies in Los Angeles could kill me because the ball team won, or whatever, drug addicts in San Francisco, or what. I could be killed here in Seattle just going to the grocery store. I would much rather be here where I have a chance of getting back to the house as opposed to, I hope I survive this train ride. Hope I can get back across the bay. That sort of thing. All of that notwithstanding, it was stressful. It was all-day grind. It was work every day, and just being in an unfamiliar environment, even though I lived in the Bay Area, so I did have some familiarity, quite a bit of familiarity with the area, but still, that's some time ago. It was absolutely worth it. Best travel experience ever, ever, ever. No contest. Learned so much. Just wow. Much obliged to all the folks who invested. If you missed out on investing on the Counter-Racist Sojourn in California, not to fret, because unfortunately, hopefully one of my last travel experiences looming will be to Buffalo, return trip. I'm hoping this will be a little easier because it's going back. I was just there, and we don't have to go in like wintertime, which was awful. This should be September, but this was the whole reason I went the first time. Cover the trial. He could get the death penalty. I for sure. Buffalo. Let's go Buffalo. For sure. So, but that's next year, 2025, September. Long way away. I can nest in Seattle until then and save up my reserves. But incredible experience in California. So all that time would be difficult to go into details. I'll probably have to post because I took so many pictures, even aside from all the documents and such, which was a massive amount. But even beside that, I took so many pictures while I was there, got so many messages from the creator, as Mr. Fuller talks about, basically the entire time I was there. Homesick and disgruntled and kicking and screaming about all of it, although there was a lot less of that in San Francisco. Like, I was much more satisfied, happy about things in San Francisco. I actually really enjoyed my time in the East Bay. LA is the worst. I love California. I had such a great time in California, except for the LA part. But I got so many messages from the creator, like literally from the very, very beginning of the trip to the very, very end. When it all started last month in October, which is kind of wacky to say, but when it all started, I told you I got on the plane sitting next to a white woman, and she's telling me about her experience at the film festival in Venice, where she saw The Order. That's one of the films I saw in Los Angeles about the white supremacist gang. And I told you, she remembered. She said, oh, yeah, I was here when that happened. She said, those were dark times. White supremacist gang. Dark times. I thought they were reading the Turner Diaries. Dark times. And then we get to the end of the trip. What terminal did Gus T fly out of for San Francisco? Harvey Milk Terminal 1. Oh, I almost dropped my pies. I had to stop, go back, and take a picture. Like, what is... it was every day, just things that would mean something to me and or maybe other C.O.W.S listeners who've been doing our Jonestown research. I went to a lecture last week at Stanford that I wasn't even supposed to be able to attend because it was supposed to be Stanford only, and then they changed and allowed me to attend, which I'm sure they regret because I asked a question everywhere I went and made a comment to boot at this one. But before we got to all of that, these folks at Stanford had vegan spring rolls. I tried to eat them all. And they had Coca-Cola, bottled water, the LaCroix sparkling water. Then they had fresh made, fresh delivered Mendocino Farms lemonade. I almost lost it. Devontae Hart, did you get Mendocino Farms lemonade before they drugged you and drove you off the cliff in Mendocino Farms? Jim Jones victims, did you all get Mendocino Farms lemonade before he drugged you and snatched you off to Guyana? I took a picture and then I tried to drink all of the Mendocino Farms lemonade. It was so good. It wasn't too sweet. Man, in fact, I got so gangster at that presentation because I hate Stanford. I hate Palo Alto too, but I hate that. Man, if you want to talk about movies, did you all see Children of the Corn? Do you know that reference? Stanford is the eeriest place I've ever been in my life. I hope I never have to go back there again. It's not quite LA, but I did not enjoy Palo Alto or Stanford at all. And it's really nothing to Palo Alto but Stanford. It is the quietest place I've ever been. This is a major university. I was there repeatedly, middle of the day, 12:30, 12 o'clock. I'd be outside next to the library, like not off, in some crevice or alleyway, main part of the campus. Nothing. I questioned from time to time, like, is school in session? Maybe they started early for Thanksgiving. No, school is in session. Where? What? I would just look around, like, and while I was in California, I visited Stanford 8 times. I visited Cal-Berkeley 7 times. I visited UCLA twice. I visited USC once. I said, damn, I should have picked up like a degree on this trip, right? Brush my shoulder. No campus is like Stanford that I've ever been to in my life. It was no ruckus. It was no students running and, call me tonight when we get drunk, the keg on it. None of that. Shh. It is the quietest library I have ever been in, and I mean ever. There's a difference between whispering and let me tell you how serious Stanford is. Quiet. To get access to the special collections Hoover archives at Stanford, they have to issue you government ID. I think it's government ID. I'm going to have to try this to see if you can get on a plane, but it has your picture. It's got the Stanford logo. I know I've used school IDs as government issued ID before. I have never been to a library before where to access, you can't even check out anything. You can't even check out anything. I can't say that enough. You cannot leave the facility with anything. To access the facility, they issue you a picture government ID. And they whisper really soft. Wait a minute, let me even back up. I wore a hat in the Hoover. They have 2 different special collections libraries at both Stanford and UC Berkeley. So this is specifically the Hoover archives at Stanford. I wore a hat. It's cold in the libraries, that sort of thing. I want to stay snug. And I'm homesick, so I like that snug, warm. The white staff person said, oh no, we don't allow hats in the library. You have to go lock that up. Can't take backpacks, food, water, cough drops, and they have that written out explicitly. Cough drops, all of it, everything I just said. Hats, none of that. Lock all that up. No pens. We'll give you pen and paper to write on. The only thing you can take, laptop, charger, phone, that's it. Not paper, nothing else. I thought I was going to be slick because it's cold. You know, libraries in general are kind of cold, right? They temperature manage. I'm going to wear my old hoodie with a hood on it so I can stay warm. Man, she looked at it. Does that have pockets on it? Oh, no. That. Up out of here. Let's go. In the locker. No pockets. Which is something else. It's one thing, I guess, to go to the library and hang out if you're just in the general library. That is not really accurate for where Gus T has spent most of the last 30 days while I was in San Francisco. Most of that time, I was at the special collections libraries for the San Francisco Main Library on the 6th floor, the Berkeley Special Collections Libraries, one at Bancroft, and the one at the Graduate Theology Center, and then at the 2 special collections libraries at Stanford, where they give you a locker. You can't have anything. They have surveillance cameras watching you, white people watching you constantly. It's lots of rules and regulations. You can't talk. You can't even have. There were so many days I was dehydrated. You can't have water. And struggling to go to the bathroom because, especially at the San Francisco Main Library, Special Collections is on the 6th floor. Because of all the lovely drug addicts they have in San Francisco, they only have one bathroom under surveillance, and it's on the 1st floor. Having a bathroom under surveillance would already make me unenthused about using that restroom, but then I'm on the 6th floor, so now do I have to pack up all of my stuff to go down to the 1st floor to use your one restroom under surveillance? San Francisco was not my favorite city. I did enjoy my time, but I mean, WTH. Any hoodles. So it would be difficult to even give like a rundown of what I'm going to try and give some of the specific highlights. The data, I don't even know all of what I have because I haven't had time to look. I told you, like in Seattle, so to get those 3,000 files on Jonestown here, you go to the library and you see like, oh, it's 500 files here, 600 there. You don't read, you just, take, and then you can read them later at your leisure. This was more like you go and it's 50,000 documents. You don't have time to read anything. Just copy. We'll read it when we get back to Washington, probably. Just copy everything. Take everything. You don't have time to read anything. It was overwhelming. It was way more data than I could have ever imagined about Jonestown, and probably if I'd had time, lots of other things. White people are not ignorant about racism. They stockpile information. Let's see. Jesus, I have to fast forward to the cemetery, and then I can give like a rough description, detail. This is exactly what the trip looked like over the 30-day period or whatever it was. But fast forwarding to the cemetery experience specifically, which was the whole purpose for going, and at this time, that was the best decision ever. I had been procrastinating about when to go, with Jonestown. I'd said I wanted to go in the springtime, like May-ish, and then I'd said summertime, be great to be in California in the summertime. It was the best decision to go at this moment, to be there November 18, to experience the same weather basically they got to experience, to see the holiday decorations going up and all the rest of it, because I'd said, totally ruin your holiday. Who wants to do Thanksgiving? And all this just happened. Best possible decision, plus the other things that happened at this moment specifically, but so glad I went. So November 18, at this point, I'd been in San Francisco like 3 weeks. Long time, I think. So I'd been asking people, calling around, looking newspapers, online, details. Jonestown, are they going to have a ceremony, a memorial anywhere? Somebody couldn't find anything. I say I'm going to go to the cemetery on the day of and just see what happens, see if people want to, stop in and talk, maybe some of the relatives of the victims, maybe they'll have a service that's just not been promoted, whatever. And I was totally acceptable if nothing. Nobody comes. I don't get to talk to anybody. There's no ceremony. I wouldn't even say wasted time, because I said it is important to ground all of this. This is not just an academic exercise and, oh, we got to sit in the library and read all these goofy books and got all this paper. Like, there's a lot of black people died. There's a lot of black children died in all of this. Like, go sit with that. So I go to the cemetery on the 18th. I get there. I remember Bay Area Mom, where she said Evergreen Cemetery, and she said it's in such a lame part of Oakland, which it is. No disrespect to anybody who lives there, but I mean, really. Go look at Lake Merritt in Oakland, and then go look at where Evergreen Cemetery is. Now you pick which area you'd like to visit or live in. Anyway, it's not the coolest part of town. I'm glad my hotel was not on that part of Oakland. Not that I would have been opposed to staying in Oakland at all. But man, it was just, that part of town was kind of raggedy. Get to the cemetery early. That was my goal. I got there like 8:40. It was sunny, but it was cold. November supposed to be. That's relative too for California. So when I say cold, it was like 60 degrees. So let's put that in context. It was cold for California. It was about 60 degrees on the dot, 60 Fahrenheit, and sunny. Lots of sun, and it was a little bit of wind, brisk morning wind in the air. I was by myself at first, about 8:40, like I said, and thankfully they had a bench where the Jonestown Memorial is. They have a marker that marks the date, and then they have 4 panels of stone with all 900 plus names written on the 4 panels of stone, including Reverend Jim Jones' name, which I knew before I got there. But okay, so they have benches where you can sit and I guess think and contemplate all of this, and it gives a nice view of kind of the East Bay area. I think you can see San Francisco from there. So I go sit down, super quiet. I enjoy a pomegranate for breakfast. I got this pomegranate from the farmer's market. It was immaculate, one of the best pomegranates I had. It really was, and I no joke about it, spiritual experience. And even that, so much of the People's Temple that we read, and even data that I was getting, it was about food. Drugging the food, withholding food, letting the black people starve while they were in Guyana unnecessarily. White people having food. I even got a crystal image in Berkeley. They had some of the journalists from the San Francisco newspapers that went to Guyana, and some of the pictures that they got before the shooting and even afterwards. They got pictures of some of the white members eating good. Got their forks and plate. You don't see no niggers around them. They got all the gruel with the flies in it and everything else. But man, and they were supposed to have food. They were going down there, God, and we're going to grow and got our plantations and plantains and eddos and all this nonsense. And they're starving needlessly. Anyway, so I got my pomegranate from the farmer's market, fresh. And it was so delicious, yum. I had been procrastinating eating it and just felt perfect. It was so many children who suffered needlessly, and something that simple they couldn't even get, probably, pomegranates and fresh fruits like that. Anyway, so I eat my pomegranate, drink some water, sit quietly, just thinking, about all of this, things I'd seen in research. About 9:30, I hadn't even been there an hour. About 9:30, black male comes up, older gentleman, and he's just kind of taking his time, and I didn't want to jump up like, oh my gosh, are you connected to Jonestown? So I waited a little while. I was like, oh, okay, are you here for Jonestown? Are you know about the story or anything? And he said, oh yeah, I lost 9 relatives at Jonestown. That was about how the exchange went, because truthfully, now I've had over a week to think about it. I have no idea what the correct response is to I lost 9 relatives, including a son, a 4-year-old son whose birthday is on November 18 at Jonestown. I really don't know what the correct thing to say is. It seems so trite and lame. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry for your loss. That seems really trite and lame, and I could not think of anything accurate to say or correct to say in response to, I lost 9 people, including my 4-year-old son, so I didn't say anything else. I shut up. If you know the correct thing to say to that, to response to that, please let me know, and I'll use it in the future, because unfortunately, then I met other people who said the same thing. I lost 10 people. I lost 27 relatives at Jonestown. Give me the correct response. I will use it in the future. Thank you kindly. So, after I sat quietly for a minute, speechless, I recovered, said, well, sir, is it possible I could, talk to you about your experience, what you remember, loss of your child, all that? And he said, sure. He had other relatives with him. They began to come down. Beautiful black female comes down. I said, wow, she's really pretty. Now, we are at the gravesite, for sure. Not gawking anything like this. Oh, she's really pretty. Now she looks and says, I lost 9 relatives at Jonestown. Of course. I want to see where my relatives are on the marker. Now, the marker has been covered the entire morning. I suspected that this was about Jim Jones' name being on the memorial because I had read about that before, and sometimes they'll cover it up and that sort of thing. So I thought that's what it might be, even though I was a little upset because I hadn't seen it at all. Like, I wanted to confirm, like, is his name really on it? Like, where is it? Like, get a picture of it. Like, look at this. I can't believe that sort of thing, just to be a journalist. I understood that, but I was, kind of like, man, that's messed up because I never even got to see what it looks like, and it's covered. Black female comes. Apparently she's never seen it either. And so she's asking questions like, why is it covered? We came all this way. We want to see our relatives and all of this. And so I'm standing next to her, and so I'm going, you've got to be joking. You've got to be joking. Like, am I supposed to be the one to explain this? Because I'm not even really for sure that that's what it is. Like, I think that's what's happening, but I didn't do it. I don't know the people who put this, who covered it up and all that. Like, I wouldn't have all those details, but it's just, I think that's what's happening. But it took me back when I told you all, non-white female here in Seattle, she was upset. It had snowed and they messed her work schedule over, and she was so angry, and she said, oh, Gus, I've been looking to talk to you and they messed it up. I said, see there, it's never cute girls like, man, Gus, I got some vegan sweet potato pie and we are going to kick it tonight. No, it's, I am mad as hell, Gus. Come here, we got to talk about this. What? That's what it reminded me of. Exactly. Like, that's what it's going to be in the system of white supremacy. So I figure, the correct thing to do is at least try to minimize some of the confusion in all of this. I say, ma'am, pardon me. I'm Gus. I'm a journalist. I think the memorial is covered because Jim Jones' name is on the memorial, and so they don't want to recognize him. This young lady did not know Jim Jones' name was on the memorial. This was a surprise, to an unpleasant surprise to her, so then she got upset about that. As I would too, but see, that's what I mean. It's never going to be anything cool in that. That would be enough. I don't know what the segue is. Like, hey, maybe we could go and talk about Jim Jones and memorials and replace white supremacy with justice. Anyway, so more family comes down, relatives, and they're talking about where everybody came from and why they came, how many relatives they lost, the details of all this, which is super ghoulish. It confirms some of the things we had already talked about, the armed guards they had at the People's Temple and threats and all the rest of it. Man, I started thinking, like, what should I ask as someone who studied all this, and then you wasted all this time to go to California to study all this in detail and get all these documents and books and blah, blah, blah. What would you ask? And then people who lost 9 of their family members, including a 4-year-old child, what would you ask them? Do you think Jim Jones was racist? Money, 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 money. In unison, the black people all said, oh no. And they gave their reasons why. He started off great. But that was fascinating. When they said he started off great or with good intentions, there was a white woman at the memorial, and she encroached, and she said, I don't know about him starting off with good intentions. She said, my cousin knew him back in Indiana. He questioned Jim Jones about his running of an elder care facility because he had a lot of those. Said he was abusing the old people and taking money from them. Jim Jones threatened to hurt him. He said, I don't know. That was in Indiana, so I don't know if he's Woo! Who is more confused? She didn't say it was a racist. She just said, I don't know if he started off with good intentions. Now, lots of things happened. Lots was discussed. I think Gus T was even money enough that I got that portion recorded, me asking them if they thought Jim Jones was a racist, and the response. Anyway, so there is a memorial service that happens that morning. I was present for that. I felt very ghoulish the whole morning. The one, we're at a cemetery. It's not just the Jonestown Memorial. We're at a rather large cemetery at that. So, I mean, I felt some type of way about I felt some type of way about lots of like recording. And I mean, it's trying to be constructive, but I mean, we're at a cemetery. Anyway, so they have the service, mention lots of important details. They mention about the people being drugged. Dr. Norwood spoke. She lost 27 of her attempted family members in Jonestown. I spoke with her cousin as well. But she mentioned having the people drugged, threatening and beating people. She mentioned his father being a member of the Ku Klux Klan in Indiana. I gave a robust applause there as well. We get through the ceremony. Other people speak, and various local NAACP members from San Francisco speak. Black people talking about Jim Jones' efforts to come in and take over the NAACP. Remember we talked about that? We read the book. Anyway, so we get through all this. Just hearing to make this real, right? This is not just data, seeing black people who lost family members and children and sisters and all of that. Man, one of the black females, Celeste, she comes back over. She says, Brother Gus, you asked me if I thought Jim Jones was racist. And I said, no. She said, Dr. Norwood she said that his dad was in the Klan. And I didn't know that. And she went and talked to Dr. Norwood. She said, he asked me if I thought Jim Jones was racist. And I said, no. And she started talking, Dr. Norwood started talking to her. Celeste came back. She said, man, I'm going to have to reconsider that because I didn't know. Questions, man. Or do you think this person is a racist? Maybe sometimes that is a great question and the drug component. She said, you had said something about, I didn't know anything about the drug because Dr. Norwood said something about him drugging people too. I'm going to have to go back and research that. I mentioned, do you know the book was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? She said, no, I've not heard of this book. I said, you can download it. It's free. And that's how I ended up coming to California. We read that book. I was stunned. I forgot to mention, I probably would have started the conversation. We're not going to call it Jonestown anymore. We're going to call it by its proper name, the People's Temple Agricultural and Medical Project. And did you know that was the official name? That they got this on placards, postcards, T-shirts? Medical Project. I forgot to lead with that one. Super important. Don't call it Jonestown. Medical project. But then I emphasized, I didn't remember to call it that, but I did remember to emphasize the drug component. Everybody should know that. That was in the front page of the newspaper immediately. This wasn't buried. This wasn't conspiracy talk. New York Times, San Francisco Examiner. They didn't just report this. They had big pictures of the drugs. And they talked about the people being, wow, why do they even have all of these drugs? Why do they have such a large quantity? You could drug a whole city with all of these drugs. How do people not know that? That alone would disqualify all this. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Oh, it was suicide. I was able to share. I shared black people that I met in the San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, all of that. If I exchanged information, I shared the CIA book and Jonestown and all of that if they were interested. But wow, most of the people that I encountered were not well informed about Jonestown. Black people or white people, non-white people, nobody really. Dr. Norwood, I guess, would be an exception. But I mean, people that I met in California are no more informed than anyone else about the particulars, what happened, which is, I mean, Jesus. Pitiful, all I can say. Turn off the television. I don't care what the Raiders are doing, Golden State Warriors are doing, E40, Too Short, San Francisco 49ers, they make it back to the Super Bowl or no. Man, I rooted for the Seahawks so hard. I didn't even watch the game. I was at the library, but I was so happy they beat the 49ers. I was so homesick. I don't even watch Seahawks games now that I'm here, but woo, man, I was rooting for them so hard. Homesick. I'm so glad to be back in Seattle. Anyway, it was really, that's all I can say. Like, for that loss of life and for the volume of material, like, real talk. If you live in California, you should be a Jonestown expert. There's no excuse, not money, not nothing. If you live in the Bay Area, you don't need anything. You can go to the San Francisco Public Library for free, and you can do exactly what I did, and it would be easier. If you live in San Francisco, you could get a library card. It would be super easy and free. You wouldn't even have to spend any money. You could, and they have racks of it. Like, I was even thinking, like, okay, so if I couldn't go to Berkeley and Stanford and San Francisco Main Library, like, which would be the place that had the most? It's Stanford. It's Stanford. But San Francisco's public library has a lot of material, like impressive material. They have enough material that is no reason anybody in San Francisco should be saying really, they have enough material. There's no reason Harvey Milk should have a terminal at that airport. Facts. That's even a piece of paper. I didn't get to read everything I got, but there were a few times where it was so stunning I had to pause. That was one. They have Harvey Milk stationery on the 6th floor. It's not even on the 6th floor. It's in a box that you'd have to request like 5 days in advance with government ID. But in a basement, they got a box. They have Harvey Milk stationery when he was supervisor of San Francisco of him. Man, y'all gonna send these government checks down to Guyana. My homie Jim Jones is an upstanding fellow, and it is a disgrace for you all to be withholding his SSI check. Like, what? Why is Harvey Milk out here caping for Jim Jones to get Social Security checks for poor black people in Guyana? Why isn't that a lead part of the story? If anything, what sort of relationship do Harvey Milk and Jim Jones have where, and this is after stories have come out, and what are they doing? Why is he caping to get their Social Security checks? Racks, that type of information, they just have racks and racks. And even, I haven't even been able to go through all the information because there's so much. It's just thousands of pages of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. I said her name so many times in a variety of ways as it relates to Jonestown. That clip that I played at the beginning of Mae Brussell, and she's talking about Dr. Louis Jolyon West, Joylon, Louis Jolyon West. This white dude, neuroscientist at UCLA. I said I was there twice while I was in LA. Did Jonestown research. I should have searched Dr. Louis Jolyon West. I did not search his name. I went back and started listening to Mae Brussel while I was researching. I did not search his name until I saw the volume of material that they had for Dr. Phil Zimbardo. Now, I already should have known because of what I had found at Berkeley. I was searching at Berkeley, both libraries, specifically at their graduate theology special collections. They had boxes. Donald Stone, if I'm remembering his name, because I had never heard this guy before, but Donald Stone, UC Berkeley, this white dude had boxes, or has boxes and boxes and boxes of Jonestown material, which included, was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? He had the whole book, and it looks like he had it years before we read it. He also had interviews that he conducted with survivors once they came back from the Bay Area. I was staggered. Transcribed, went into detail. Jim Jones sexually molested us and made us. Click, 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 get it all. Click, 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 click. I'm going through and he's got audio cassettes. Like, what is... David, he's the white man in charge of special collect. David, do you see these audio... Says, oh, do you want it digitized? Yes. Says, oh, I'll get right on that. Email it to you. David hops on these cassettes. He comes back like 20 minutes later. I'm copying other stuff. And he says, I don't know. It seems like this might not be Jonestown. It's like I think he fell asleep, the doctor, for a minute. And then he's talking about other unrelated stuff. So I don't know. This might be, might be a dead end trail here. I say, rats. Oh, well. I go back to, I'm copying other material. Dave left. He came back in about 30 minutes, and his face looked totally different. Dave looked at me, and he said, never mind. Seems like he's talking to some high-level official at the People's Temple, which, in my mind, immediately clicked white person. And they're going over what they did and all this. Man, I want to tell him, shut up, Dave. Just get back in there and digitize, man. You're wasting time. Get to work, man. Get to work. That should have told me, like, oh man, wait till you get to Stanford. I didn't know. I had an inkling, but I didn't know. I said when we started reading, was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? I said Dr. Phil Zimbardo at Stanford, one of Dr. Shockley's cronies. I don't know if they were friends, but they're at the same institution at the same time. Cronies. Stanford isn't that big. This dude is renowned for his studies of, what do you call it, behavior modification, brainwashing, how you have sadistic control over people. If you're not familiar with the Stanford prison experiment, it is legend. If you take a psychology class, they still talk about it. If you major in psychology, you'll probably have to write a paper about it at some point or read many books about it. But I mean, this guy is legend. I didn't know that this guy was connected with Jonestown until we started reading, creeping along, like, oh, this guy talked to some of the people and blah, blah, blah. And man, Dr. Zimbardo has boxes and boxes and boxes of material on Jonestown. He has boxes that are just documentaries. Like dozens. He has 6 reels of 16 millimeter. I tried to get it digitized, and they said it's not even accessible because it's so expensive at this point. We need the technology to catch up. I can't even imagine. Now, what data is on these 6 reels of 16 millimeter? It's 6 of them. Where did they shoot? Where did they get this from? One reason, got to go back to Stanford or let technology catch up where they could put that online. He had racks of other video cassettes, documentaries about 3-hour documentaries about Jonestown that came out like 40 years ago. I'd never even heard of some of them documentaries that just focused on the black children that got killed in Jonestown. Videos of interviews he did with the subjects that came back. Now that's where I thought of Dr. Welsing repeatedly. How is it that you got all of these white doctors at UCLA, Stanford, Cal-Berkeley? Even I have to pause right there. I didn't even get to read everything, so I really don't know everything that I have. But it was a few things that, whoa, caught my attention. One of the reasons I had gaps, I knew I had gaps in information that just was not accessible here in Washington State that would be easily accessible once I got to California. One of them was New West magazine. Very important for the Jonestown story for lots of reasons. I had the articles that broke in 77, but I didn't have access to the full magazine so I could just see. What did they publish, moving forward? 77. What did they publish in 78, 79? Man, while I'm flipping for the Jonestown articles, which were there for 78, 79 that I didn't have, New West did a whole report on CIA control of major California institutions like Berkeley, Stanford, UCLA, USC. I'd heard this before, but just to get a reminder, like, oh yeah, because that was in the newspaper, San Francisco Chronicle, other outlets, they had been talking about this. MK Ultra and mind control, and they're doing all this like, what? What? Then to hear that after Mae Brussel is talking about Jolly and West and these white people that are, hey, we think the Negroes are rioting in Watts and Newark. We need to come up with some sort of medical intervention to stop their drapetomania. Some of the same white people who thought like that, Dr. William Shockley, some of these same white people have massive boxes of files on Jonestown. Matter of fact, with Dr. Zimbardo, he has massive files where he talked to the members of Jonestown for years and incorporated this into his teaching, people who survived it. He has slides that he made for his classes that might have been exclusively white students at this time period. We're talking early 80s and then forward. And he studied Jonestown for like decades. People would send him material and articles and documentaries and books and all kinds of things for years, decades. He has a slide from the murderers at Jonestown, and it's labeled black prisoners. It's not labeled prisoners, multi-racial, black prisoners. The very next slides, Nazi Germany. Dr. Wellesley, and now that was laid out in, was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment, that this was all concentration camp anyway, but dang, that's the way Dr. Zimbardo taught this too. Oh, I took pictures, but then I stopped because I had been at Stanford long enough at this point that I said, I think I got slides digitized previously, or to put the request in and take some time. I went up and asked the white man again. I said, can I get these slides digitized? Oh yeah, it just takes a little time. Bang, let's get the roll. Let me get all the, oh my God. White people are not ignorant about racism. I want to sit in the class where he teaches, give me how you relate the black prisoners of Jonestown to Nazi Germany. Let me hear how Dr. Zimbardo does this. Did Dr. Welsing know about this? I'm going to say no. Again, spectacular failure. All of us, because I'm just going to, no other logical conclusion. None of our counter-racist students went to do this, and we even have people who know Dr. Welsing, graduated from Stanford, didn't do this. Spectacular failure of Dr. Welsing. But I thought, like, Dr. Welsing is a general and child psychiatrist. Why didn't she get access to the victims who survived and came back? Wouldn't she be best qualified, more so than Dr. Zimbardo, to go and talk to a black? And you got black, some of these folks were like 18 years old that came back. Why didn't Dr. Welsing get access to some of these people to talk to them? And what did you experience? What did he do? Were you drugged? What types of things were he saying? All of that. She didn't even get access to the autopsies. These white people got access to these black people for years to study. And that even made it, that is a part of the continuing state. You get to follow up on them. Man, I've never done anything like this. I had no idea when I mentioned Dr. Zimbardo and Stanford at the beginning in March that I was going to be going to Stanford and going through their archives. Dr. Zimbardo was there when they brought Walter Rodney from Guyana in 1979 to talk about Jonestown. They have Dr. Zimbardo's notes on Dr. Rodney's talk, what he thought was important about this and how it related to Jonestown. They have all of that saved, boxes stored at Stanford. Notes that he took on different documentaries about Jonestown. And all. Dr. Zimbardo had a copy. Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? I kicked myself because, like I said, it was so much information. Speed, you got to go fast. You just got to copy. You can't read everything. Just got to roll. If I had been thinking, I would have copied Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment anyway, just to see what notes did he take in this book. What did he highlight? What did he think was important? Same thing for I would have photocopied it twice, both times that I saw it. I didn't even recognize the importance of that. That book was not in wide circulation, but they had it at Stanford. Or they didn't have it at Stanford. I have to go back to look to see if it was in their catalog. Dr. Zimbardo had his copy. Dr. Stone at Cal-Berkeley, he had his copy. Did Dr. Welsing get a copy of Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment? She was a medical doctor. White people are not ignorant about racism. Not at all. I bet Dr. William Shockley got a copy of Was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment. Anyway, the Jonestown information is staggering. In fact, they had a book at San Francisco's main library on the 6th floor, hidden in the bowels. You have to request white people to fetch it for you. Heavenly Deceptor. That was one of the few books I couldn't download. They don't have that one on the San Diego State website for Jonestown. You can't download this one. That book also posits this was a CIA project, and in that book specifically, Heavenly Deceptor, they even question, where did Michael Mayers get his information for this book? He said he got it from the public library. I think he's lying. I said, dang, like, whoa, where do you think he got this information from that's not readily accessible to the public? Massive quantity of details on white people have massive quantities of information on Jonestown. Massive, more than you could imagine. Any hoodles, I did not just do Jonestown. That was the main focus for sure, and I was on my grind about that. But the totality of the Cal-Berkeley trip, just to give the particulars for what all entailed 30 days. So I went to LA October 22nd. I was there for the film festival for the 23rd through the 27th. I flew out of LA on the 30th, so I had 2 so-called free days, 28th and 29th, where I was thinking I could talk to filmmakers, I could research, all of that. I went to UCLA, I went to the beach, I went to Malibu, I went to Santa Monica Pier, saw the Ferris wheel, all of that. Got vegan pizza, was able to get Jonestown research, not as much as I could have. If the World Series had not been there, remember I talked about how stressful that was, and they burned the bus down the day I left, all of that. Got to San Francisco on the 30th. We broadcasted on the 31st and November 1. I had anticipated being at the Food Summit on November 1, but Stanford, how William Shockley racist of them, they reneged on my confirmed acceptance for confirmed attendance for the Food Summit that was supposed to be Friday, or was on Friday, November 1. Since my attendance was confirmed, I was registered, accepted in writing before I left Washington State, I was just going to go and make them deny me entrance at the front door, because I had things to do at Stanford regardless. But I was so exhausted from the LA part of the experience, I could not get up at 5 o'clock. Stanford is about 40 miles, as I said, from where I was staying in San Francisco. So it does, take some trekking to get up and get there, like 7:30, that type of thing. You'd have to get up pretty early to do all that. I overslept that morning and was not able to attend the Food Summit. I was so disgruntled about that. Them reneging on because I think if they had not reneged, if it had just been you're cool and going, I think I'd have been up and been there. Compensated best I could. Started going to San Francisco's public library, the main branch, that Saturday, and getting boxes. That's what I did for that full weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Went to Berkeley the first time around that Monday, November 5, the day of the election. I went to the San Francisco Museum of Art the first time. Came back, we did the broadcast. Went to the Berkeley Library that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I had my whole code down by then. The weekends, I would go to the San Francisco Public Library because they were open, and open early too. You could go at 10 a.m. and work all day long. Did that first weekend, Monday. So now I've been there 2 weeks. That Monday, Veterans Day. Super disgruntled about that. But I made the best. I went to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art for the second time. I was able to see the Carl Walker exhibit, which was closed when I went the week before. It was great. I took lots of pictures. I was so excited. And plus, she was going to be there the next week. So I was like, oh, I'll be able to, comment intelligently and know what she's talking about and all that. So I took pictures of that. Then I went to the beach. I did the hike at Land's End Trail, which is kind of at the most western point of the city. You're even west past the Golden Gate Bridge. That was one of the highlights of the trip, with many highlights. It's like a 3-mile hike. You can see 2 different beaches, and you're along the water, and you're kind of hiking, and you can see Golden Gate Bridge as you're getting closer to it hiking. Anybody, if you go to San Francisco and you have time, it takes about 2 hours or so to do the whole 2.5-mile trail at Land's End Trail. I would suggest doing the hike, especially if it's sunny. If the weather cooperates and it's over 55 degrees and sunny, you should do Land's End Trail. You'll get a little workout in your glutes, quads, hamstrings, calves, all that. You'll get a great workout, burn some calories, and you will get some spectacular views. I mean, Golden Gate Bridge is right there. Pacific Ocean right there. It is amazing. Man. And if you go to Mile Rock Bridge, that's in the midpoint of the trail. I love that spot. They have so many rocks out on the beach, and it's not that many people there. I think it was 5 people out on the beach while I was there. I almost fell asleep. I climbed up on one of the rocks and the sun was out. It was so comfortable. If I had bought a blanket and if I didn't have it in my mind that I was going to do the rest of the trail, I would have napped right there. It was so cozy, and you can get great shots of Golden Gate Bridge, and you can feel like the power of the water rushing up on the rocks, and just great. Anyway, so I did Land's End Trail. You come out at the end, it's not where you started at. I looked on the map, and I saw that if you come out at the end, you come out close to China Beach. I've been to China Beach. I told you I lived in San Francisco. I lived in the East Bay. I've been to China Beach like many times. Love China Beach. I remember asking, it was a racist suspect I worked with, and I just moved to California, and I asked her, like, what's one of the best beaches to go to here? And she said China Beach. You can see the sunset, you see Golden Gate Bridge, and lots of people, I don't know if it's they don't know about it or they just don't go, but it's normally not very crowded. That was the case all those years ago and remains the case now. I came out of Land's End Trail, and they saw the sign, China Beach, half a mile. Are you serious? Walked down to China Beach. Stunning. I was able to be there for the sunset. I also took that as a signal from the creator. Twice in a lifetime. I was not even expecting to do that again, and to be able to enjoy the sunset down on the rocks, and also not very many people down there, and just wow, amazing. So I went to China Beach. That was a great reset for all the time sitting in special collections where you have to be cold and can't wear a hat. So I did the beach, and then I even went to do song bath that night, which was great to have like the singing bowls and all of that. Very relaxing, very soothing. Got up the next day, went to Berkeley first thing in the morning, researched all day, shot back across the bay, heard Amos Kennedy, black male, author, artist, talk about his book in the bowels of the San Francisco's Public Library main building. That was Tuesday. Wednesday, I got up, went to Stanford for the first time, stayed down there all day long. The next day, the day I was most proud of, that's November 14, or one of the days, November 14, had that like marked on the calendar before I left Washington State. Got up, went to Stanford first thing in the morning. This was business trip, all business. Same thing I tell you all, if you can't be early, be on time. Special Collections Library at Stanford opens at 9 a.m. I got there at 8:40 as I planned, so I could get set, have everything together. So as soon as they open the door, can run right in, get right to work, which is exactly what I did. That was the day I got access to Dr. Zimbardo's boxes of files. I was stunned and seeing all the people click, 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 just taking pictures, don't even have time to read. Like, oh my God, this is so great. It was so much material, like click, 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 going through. So I was super focused, could work up to like 4:05, left, caught the train north, going back to San Francisco, got to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art so I could see Carl Walker, got there at 5:40 exactly as I planned. Got there, I was on the front row. Young lady was there, black female, native. Was talking to her about Jonestown. And she talked about, knowing the area, talked to her about was Jonestown a CIA medical experiment and all the rest of it. Ended up being able to ask Carl Walker a question because I was sitting in the front row. That was great. Even asked her because she was only one white piece of art. All the other art pieces that she did were black people. So I was able to ask about the one white character. Great to get details. And even to hear all the great background that Carl Walker provided about the exhibit. I did not grasp that the obsidian rocks were from Lake County, California, where they had a volcanic eruption, I guess some decades back, whenever, part of California history. This might even be centuries back at this point. But they had a volcanic eruption, so they have all these black obsidian rocks on the beach. It's like, oh my God, that would have been something to see. But she used all of those rocks as grounding for her artwork, and talking about the history of California being longer than just, people, longer than we can imagine, even with how long it took for that volcanic rock obsidian to form. But that was amazing, all the rest of it. Got back on the grind Friday, back to Stanford, stayed down there the whole day. Missed one of the workshops that I wanted to see about so-called Creole females, middle of the day. but stayed on the grind, getting more research. I think that was the first day that I went to the Hoover Archive, was the next day at Stanford, where you can't wear a hat or anything else. Saturday, went back to the public library, San Francisco, researched all day, saw Erykah Badu that evening. That was even wacky because I had seen Erykah Badu in concert previously. I had avoided seeing her since because I've been on the West Coast, and I said, it'll be a lot of white people, suspected racists, and it just won't be as fun. I saw her previously in North Carolina, Charlotte specifically, and it was super, super black. Like 80% black people, probably more than that, I'd say. It was a few white people there, but not many. San Francisco, very different in so many ways. Like, and even for full context, part of the reason I went was I looked like, where's she going to be at? Where's this venue? Because I was at the main library downtown. I looked and said, oh, you are a 1-minute walk away from the concert at the library. I said, that is crazy. That can't be. I said, oh, way, Brother Gus. That is true. Just walk outside. You are there. And indeed, that was the case. I did not know that this odd building that is in between City Hall, where Mayor Moscone and Harvey Milk were assassinated, is the concert hall. Who knew? Anyway, that also was not lost on me that I'm going to the concert literally in between the assassination spot and the library where I spent all this time getting information. I go to, and this is the Bill Graham Center. So I go to the center, it's oodles of white people, and they are allowing all kinds of narcotic consumption. We are next to City Hall. Man, I know the wacky tobacco is legal in California as it is in Washington State, my home, but this is not legal. You cannot just come out at the concert hall or even outdoors unless I have been misinformed and, puff, 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 puff. That is not, how it is supposed to work, as is my understanding. And particularly, I'd met Cal's listener, Stanford grad, at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And he emphasized, the area Hunters Point, they invested all these millions of dollars, and it's this amazing park at this point. To get that, the loser in the presidential election, Kamala Harris, with her San Francisco roots, district attorney's office, she had prosecuted all these black males in Hunters Point for cannabis possession and use out in public and all the rest of it, and that's not cool, and black male privilege, that sort of thing. I was like, wow, if that's the case, why are y'all letting all of these mostly white people smoke God knows what next to City Hall? Like, what in the wind? For real? If it was in San Francisco, I maybe would have felt slightly different, but I mean, Jesus Christ, everybody here is not smoking cannabis. You already know I got to slip a little something extra in mine, dab of fentanyl or whatever. Why do we all have to get it? And I know this has to be the case. Miss Badu finally comes out doing her show, get about an hour into the performance. White woman staggers out on the ground. People around me, whoa, ma'am, what's wrong? Can we get you down? Oh my goodness. Now, I'm watching all of this. I am amazed because it seems the event staff, they are so accustomed to this sort of thing. They got a code for this immediately. It didn't even take 2 minutes. I don't even think it took 60 seconds. Medical staff zoomed in, scooped her up, took her out, and moving forward. I said, I guess that's great and all that they have medical staff and everything else, but dang, it left me with the impression this probably happens a lot. And before I even had time to say, gosh, you know what you're talking about, within 10 minutes, it happened again. San Francisco is not that cool. Do not be mistaken. I love California. San Francisco is not my first choice, as Oh yeah, that's where I want to stay at. Not at all. Cool to visit, which is what I said before when I lived there. Cool to visit. I don't know if I'd want to live there. What in the hell? And that's exactly why I had avoided seeing Erykah Badu in this context. What in the hell? I do not remember any of the Negras in North Carolina, Charlotte, needing medical attention. I don't remember anybody wearing, are we going to get a fentanyl contact from being up here and all with it? None of that. None of that. San Francisco. Man. Lame, lame, lame. Now, signal from the creator, even at the Erykah Badu concert. I'm waiting for her to see if she's going to acknowledge Jonestown because she's at the concert on November 16, 2 days away in San Francisco. I was thinking, maybe she says, my child, he's performing with me on stage. He was born on November 18. Yikes. Just like the black male whose son died at 4 years old in Guyana, also born on November 18. I guess that wasn't sufficient. Creator said, do you need one more? Let's make sure we get one more before we wrap up. Erykah goes to wrap up the show. I even pointed that out. When she was in North Carolina, she performed for like 3 hours. Seriously. She performed in San Francisco for like an hour and a half or so. She gets to the end of her set. She says, they are telling me I gotta go. And they're like, no, stay. We want to smoke more, stay. She says, no, they're telling me, they're saying I gotta wrap it up. They said, I gotta wrap it up. And she turned around and she said, what did the man say? In San Francisco, you know for sure, that is not Leroy, Jamal, Devontae, none of them. None of them are out there. Hey, Erykah, wrap it up. We got things to do. Wrap it up. I know who the man is. Is he off my stage? We got things to do. Off the stage. That was November 16. Sunday, 17, went back to San Francisco Public Library, racking up more material. They had so much. But as a matter of fact, that Sunday, I went to the library. I found whole books on the assassination of Dr. Marcus Foster I didn't even know existed. Got the whole books. I cannot wait to see. Now, is Jim Jones' name going to be in these books? Should it be? Got the books on Dr. And interestingly, those books on the assassination of Dr. Marcus Foster, you can't check those books out of the library either. And you have to have government ID to access those books. Either way, got those. Then I moved because they had other books that I didn't even know had information about Jonestown, so I go to get those books as well. One of the few times I actually get to use the scanner, make it easy. I don't have to use my phone or anything else. I can just quick, easy, use the scanner. They have scanners on every floor at the San Francisco Main Library. Whoopee. I go plug in my flash drive, ready to roll, start taking books. There's a white woman using the scanner next to me. Now she starts doing the talking like we're going to be buddies and all that. I totally ignore, and I have my headphones on. I totally ignore her. I'm about my business. I didn't come in to talk. Do what you do. I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, we've been copying for, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour, because I finished one book and then I found another one. So, I've got several projects I'm working on. Move on to my second, third book. I'm listening to my headphones as I'm copying, because the copiers are loud too. Like, I don't know if you've used scanners, whatever, but even if you're just scanning, they're loud. The machine moves and all that. Technology hasn't caught up where they can get the shh. But it's kind of loud. So I got my headphones on, listening to my music. The white woman, after she's tried her, tawdry, hey, Nigra, how you doing? You enjoying your Sunday? It's a beautiful time. What do you think, Nigra? And I'm ignoring her. Now she's Hey, nigga, turn your headphones down. I continue my same ignoring her. Nigga, did you hear me? You gonna turn that racket down. I'm not gonna listen to that. You gonna turn that. What's wrong with you? You gonna turn it. So she does all that, and she goes to get library staff. I don't turn anything down. I don't acknowledge. White library staff comes in. I keep scanning that. The scanner is loud. Like, if I'm going to pick out something that's loud, it's the scanner. You got two scanners going in here. So anyway, the white librarian comes in, and it's like, what? What are you talking about? He's got the headphones on. And she says, well, I don't hear anything. So, I mean, just, let's all just get along, and you stay in your space, and he's in his space, and we'll move forward. And the librarian leaves. That's about what I expected. White woman, now she's really upset. We continue copying. Black male comes into the room. Not my brother either. I got my headphones on. I'm not talking to him either. But this black man, the whole time that I'm scanning, I have my items, like my backpack, not my computer, but my backpack, and what I view as equally valuable. They have a massive farmer's market outside the San Francisco main library every Sunday from like 10 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And when I say massive, it is California massive. So I had nabbed, several pounds of grapefruits before I go in. Black male comes in the room. He says, hey, are those your pomegranates out there? Do you think I can have one? Now, these are not pomegranates. These are grapefruits. Do you think I could have one? I am appalled. Like, do what? Is he my grapefruits that he thinks are pomegranates? Like, nah, you definitely can't have one because you don't even know what you're asking for. Like, no. He says, man, what in the world? You supposed to share fruit? You didn't even have to pay for it. Man, I'm really wild. Like, do what? What do you mean? Like, they don't give away fruit at the farmer's market? What do you say? Ignore. The white woman chimes in. Jeez, black brother, I'm so sorry. He's got all that racket on, the headphone. I'm sorry you've got to listen to all that while you're here in the copy room. In my mind, like I could strangle both of you, like black brother wasn't even complaining about the music. He's trying to steal my grapefruits that he thinks are pomegranates. Nobody even said anything about my head. Copy, man. Copy. Finished all my copies, sprinted away from the entire floor, and I've been keeping an eye on my, almost said pomegranate, been keeping an eye on my grapefruits the whole time because I thought, they might try. I told you they only have one bathroom in this library because of the vagabonds, so I have to make sure I keep an eye on my grapefruits. They try and steal my fruits. Speaking of produce, I'm not lost on where I left off in my day count, November 17. I know where I was at on November 18, but man, the produce, California has amazing produce. Wow, to be reminded of that. I love Seattle produce. We get a lot of our produce from California, but man, to be there, to be able to get it fresh at the farmer's market, man. I went to the farmer's market before I came back, and I went to Berkeley Bowl again before I got back on that plane. I was able to smuggle back a full yellow watermelon, 8 pounds of pomegranates, I think 4 pounds of grapefruits, persimmons, a full pineapple. If I had an empty suitcase, I would have racked up. I didn't want to check a bag either, but if I had an empty suitcase, you could have probably convinced me to check a bag. I would have had cauliflower, pumpkins, squash, peppers, like, oh man. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't even forget. And 3 plant-based squash pies that I got from the farmer's market that they make out of all the ingredients they grow on the farm. Spectacular. I was even so proud that I was able to smuggle all of that successfully, no checked bag. And I knew it was going to be a great day. I got to the airport with all of that fruit. I go through the first TSA checkpoint. Pretty, beautiful, black TSA lady. I'm a little confused because I'm supposed to be at the Seagate Harvey Milk Terminal 1. I'm a little confused because it looks like it's a different gate. And she says, oh, wait a minute, where are you trying to get to? And I said, the Seagate. She said, oh, you're good, just stay right here, you're good. I said, wait a minute, matter of fact, did you get sweet potato pie? I said, child, let me tell you. Vegan, and I'm telling her, she was like, oh, that is a good Thanksgiving. I was like, right, like, man, I don't even celebrate all that, but man, I went to the next TSA agent who was also a victim of racism. She says, and before I said anything, I said, whoa, I'm not doing any of that facial recognition. No. She said, oh, okay. She said, whoa, did you get, what kind of pie is that? Already knew it is going to be a great day. Nothing to worry about at all. So I finally take your shoes off, get through all that so you can get through the TSA scan part. I get everything. I get my shoes, my backpack, or not my bag, I get my duffel bag and everything else except my backpack. That's where my yellow watermelon is, my pineapple, and my grapefruits. Non-white TSA agent, he grabs my backpack and he says, do you have a ham in here? And I swear, I had to ask him about 8 times, like, what? Because I just couldn't, I guess my brain computer could not process, like, swine. So I'm trying to think he said something else or whatever. Like, I think about the 8th or 9th times, like, I think he is saying ham. Like, what? What? Do I have a ham? It's like, oh, I got that yellow watermelon. He said, to what? Now he's doing the same, like, what? You have a water? He just says, open it up. And he's looking like, oh my God. Wow. You must really love fruit or food, he said. Said, yeah, I mean, how could I come to California and not get produce? I kid you not, I would not lie about this. He zips my bag up, gives me back my yellow watermelon, pineapple, all of my produce. He says, wow. You are about to have smoothie time. I almost cried at TSA. Like, oh my God. Like, woo, I was going to give him a hug and my number. Like, brother, if you get to Seattle, oh, you have no idea. It is going down. Oh, no problems. I sung Seattle songs in the airport and flawless ride back. Pies. I didn't even mess up my pies. And first smoothie back, grapefruit, pineapple smoothie. I didn't even use the pineapple that I got in San Francisco yet. I had pineapple in the freezer here still, but oh, it was so good. Like, they have amazing produce in California, which only further confirms how lame Los Angeles is. I was in San Francisco 6 days, and I passed 2 farmers markets. I was in Los Angeles for 8 days, where I went to Beverly Hills, L.A., East L.A., Malibu, and Santa Monica. Do you know how many farmers markets I passed? L.A. is lame as F word. And do you know how lame Los Angeles is? We have listeners in Los Angeles who had the audacity. I'm going to stick up for my city. Victims guaranteed qualified. They're going to have the audacity to tell me, Gus T, you just don't know the correct place to eat, black brother. They got plenty of spots where you can get down and eat in L.A. Man, do you know where I live? I live in Seattle. That is crazy talk to me. You have to know the right part of town to be able to eat life-saving food? What? What? I can walk across the street. I didn't say walk down the block. I said I can walk across the street. Vegan maple bar? Organic fresh turmeric. Either. Any day of the week. That's across the street. My favorite grocery store, I can walk there in 10 minutes. vegan chocolate cake, bok choy, bulk garbanzo beans, pineapple, blueberries. Take your pick. I can walk to get vegan cinnamon rolls. If I should happen to be on the other side of town, I could walk from the U District. Vegan ice cream. We could go to the vegan Thai spot. Vegan donuts. Vegan sushi. Vegan burrito. Take your pick. Where would be the wrong side of... I can't even think of where would I be where... If you don't know the right spot to eat, you're going to be drowning in McDonald's and hot dogs. What? And I don't know where that would be in San Francisco either. Bay Area, period. I just told you, I was there 6 days and passed 2 farmers markets. 2. I had vegan Thai food. I had vegan Ethiopian, vegan burritos. Easy eats, man. LA is all kind of food. It's not just a food desert, like for real. You are in the desert. And then you just got the food desert on top of all that in Los Angeles. I told you, I just looked at that report before I left Seattle that said, man, to some degree, you can measure quality of life by how many McDonald's do you have in the area. I have not been around so many McDonald's in like years, but for the time I spent in LA, they had them on every block. It was all over the city, all over the city. McDonald's. Matter of fact, do you want to know how lame LA is? They got payphones, like lots of payphones in LA. That's when I saw payphones immediately, and not in no bad area. What kind of crack hole were you in? Nah, man, I saw payphones like a couple blocks from USC. It's like you have wandered back into Neanderthal times, and they know it's so lame here. You might get robbed and mugged, and they'll steal your iPhone. The best you can do is hope you have a quarter so you can use a payphone. And I think they're like 25 cents too. LA is the lamest place in the history of the world. And it further confirms now that I've been back to LA more recently. When I see LA on TV, they know LA is lame. They don't show LA. They show pictures of Santa Monica. They show the pier. We got to show the because they know it's nothing cool to show in Los Angeles. They show the pier. They show Malibu. They show other parts that are not Inglewood and all this other nonsense that is not. It might be in L.A. County, but it's not L.A. proper. Even most of the people like Kobe Bryant and them, we miss you, Kobe. Kobe didn't live. And what was that plane crash? That was not in Los Angeles. Let me find Bron James. Let me find his address. I bet it is not L.A. proper. Magic Johnson, I bet it is not L.A. proper. L.A. is so out of this world, land. The smog, that alone. This trip reminded, I do not want to be anywhere where I feel like my health is compromised. It was at that Erykah Badu concert. They had the music up so loud. That would have been the lamest experience ever, but they had earplugs. For the 2 minutes before I got those earplugs, like, Jesus Christ, why do I have to sacrifice my hearing to be at the concert? What the hell? I just wanted to hear her do a few songs and all that. Now I got to have permanent hearing. I'm trying to hear the Jim Jones audio once they get it transferred. Oh, earplug, thank God. Oh, what is all that for? Y'all gonna let these people come in here and smoke every sort of narcotic imaginable and then turn the music up way too loud? Come on. Anyway, they didn't do that in Charlotte either. Anyway, let's see. Anything else I want to make sure? I pick up where I left off. November 18, I went to the Jonestown Memorial. Amazing. I wish that is one. If I had it to do over, there were 2 services. Black people and basically 2 white people were at the first service. White true crime people came in the interim to just observe, and they even said, we just watched this on TV, and it was true crime. Anyway, they just came to be observers, no special connection to all of this, just, we watched it on TV. And, Second service, was white people. And I was with Celeste, some of the family members who lost a relative, 9, people and all that. And I said, did you notice it was black people, basically, all exclusively at the first service. This service is like a lot of white people. And she says, yes, I did notice. Man, the choice before me was, okay, there's so much data. I've been at this point, that service was starting at 2, the one with mostly white people, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Had been at the cemetery since about 8:40 that morning. So just for that, that's a long time to be at a cemetery, I think, right? What is that, like 5+ hours at a cemetery? I'd been there 5+. The choice was stay for the white service, observe and see if you can question them, or go to Cal-Berkeley special collections because they had more material I had not seen. Make a decision. I went to Berkeley, but and that ended up not being a bad decision because I did get data and I was, on the schedule. Knew I was going to Stanford tomorrow. Man, I do think stay. See if you can ask the same question to these white people. Do you think Jim Jones was racist? And I think some of those white people might have been responsible for Jim Jones' name being on that plaque. Time. That was Monday, Monday the 18th, just last week. Tuesday, got up, went to Stanford, grind all day long, data, tried to get as much information as I possibly could. Did that for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I missed a few of the lectures that I attended. I attended 1 lecture at USC, 2 lectures at Stanford, and 1 lecture at Cal-Berkeley. I talked about the Cal-Berkeley lecture previously and the USC lecture about war games before. That last lecture at Stanford, which I hate. I got lots of information. The archivists were great, as they were at pretty much all the institutions. But, oh man, you can tell the William Shockley white supremacy of Stanford. This is not a school for Negroes. You can just tell. Like, I would get, matter of fact, I'm going to tell you, Stanford, when you take that train from San Francisco to Palo Alto, 40 miles, when you get off that train, the Stanford shuttle picks you up where you can get, like, literally 1 step off the train, you step on the Stanford shuttle, which is super comfortable. It is free, and it takes you promptly to the Stanford, like, not just to the doorstep of the campus, like to the doorstep of the specific building you're going to at Stanford. It is, woo, it is, I told you they had spring roll. I don't think I've ever been to a lecture. I've been to lectures like at a lot of different colleges. They have never served us spring rolls and fresh made lemonade at the lecture. UW has hooked it up at some lectures. They've given out books and all that. They didn't have no free spring rolls and Mendocino Farms lemonade. That lecture with Catherine Oliverius, this white woman was talking about syphilis, to a degree, syphilis and malaria in New Orleans, syphilis, yellow fever in New Orleans during the 18th century, and she kept emphasizing white men, slave owners, and she called it amino-capitalism. You know how racists, they figure out all these cool ways to not say racism and how they devalued black life and would just replace them and get new Negroes and all the rest of it. And I told you, I asked the question everywhere. Every lecture I went, I asked the question. When I was at the film festival, they had filmmakers for almost all the films I went to. So I panned up every time. I got to ask a question almost every time out. Man, I put my hand up like I was supposed, like I'm valedictorian at Stanford. I said, I got a comment and a question. Comment, since you put so much emphasis on white men, I got to quote Dr. Trevin Logan. I'm so proud that I remembered his name, didn't even look it up. Yup, Dr. Trevin Logan's work, who just published about how in Louisiana and New Orleans specifically, white women outnumbered white men as slave owners in many territories, and that fits the pattern of how white people consistently present racism as though it is the business of white men exclusively. It is not. You cannot have a system of racism without white women. Oh my God. That white heifer wanted to interrupt me so bad. I wish I had the video of this. She wanted to interrupt me so bad, and the lame non-white people, lackeys that were with her, no name calling their victims, but I mean, oh, I have nothing but spite for Stanford. Like, everybody, the non-white people, the white, really, it'd have been like, anybody, if you want to start something, y'all want some static, any of you can step outside right now. Olivarius, any of you non-white people, you feel some type of way outside, let me finish my spring rolls. Get at me, please. 1, you can't have a system of racism without these white chicks. 2, I switched and asked her. She was talking about the attitude during the 19th century of the white people being, hey, let them die. We'll get rid of the folks that, got a problem and these infirm niggers, and we'll have a better population. I said, that's exactly what white people said with the Rona, and specifically, it wasn't just Republicans, it wasn't just Trump. This was white people at large, because there were studies done. White people said, I'm not wearing no mask. I'm not doing no social distancing. If niggers, and that's exactly the way I said it on purpose, like, F to all of Stanford, because I think they had this recorded too, like, for Devontae Hart, who didn't get no lemonade from Mendocino Farms. White people express the same disdain for niggers right now. How does that connect to you? Oh, you could see they were so I'm so glad I got to do that and got that recorded. Suspected racist Dr. Catherine Olivarius, that's how you say it, Olivarius, and they lied. They said that we could have a hard copy of the book, and then they said, oh, no, it's just an e-copy. Man, you gave an option at the beginning. I was going to get a hard copy just to have it on my shelf. Be like, man, the lames at Stanford. Remember I ate all their spring rolls? And they lied about that too. Like I said, I drank as much lemonade as I possibly could. I took all the spring rolls, and I got my comment and question. And then Dr. Olivarius and her response, where you could see the spite and the racism, where she wanted to interrupt me so bad. I mentioned Dr. Stephanie Jones Rogers' work, where she also, hey, these white chicks on the plantation, man. Dr. Olivarius said, oh, Dr. Stephanie Jones Rogers, she's one of my friends. I love her work. That just made me further gag. United Independent. I don't care about any of the non-white people that have white friends. And I don't care how many white people have non-white homies or friends or whatever. If you're classified as white, Jim Jones. That's what I think of you. And that's about how she ran that whole meeting. Anyway, Lemonade, Mendocino Farms. Anyway, that was last Thursday, and then I was able to come in and get one more day of work on Friday. Or excuse me, that was Wednesday. Thursday, I did double duty. I went to Stanford, worked, got as much done as I could, left at 12, went to Berkeley, worked until they closed the library, and then went to San Francisco's main library and worked. So I spent a third of the day at Stanford, a third at Berkeley, and then went to the San Francisco main library. That was even wacky for me cosmically, because Stanford and Berkeley played each other Brain Damage Bowl that Saturday, and I was on the campus for both schools the same day. They both were talking about the game and all that nonsense. Anyway, Friday, last time, went down to Stanford, worked, got all the information I possibly could. In fact, that day, William Shockley, I had said when I was still in Washington State, I want to put William Shockley at the end because I know he has lots of information, eugenics, maybe even debate with Dr. Welsing from the 1970s. Got to spend some time. Let me look through the archives of Dr. William Shockley at Stanford. Oh, my God. I did get, because they got lots of his papers and talks and radio interviews and heaps of that stuff. You can spend months going through all that. Man, I just put in a search, what does Dr. Shockley have in here with regards to Dr. Welsing? This joker has multiple audio recordings of Dr. Welsing in his boxes of saved papers at Stanford. I wigged. I'm like, whoa. So he's been like, that's another one. We totally failed Dr. Welsing. Like, for reals, nobody went and looked at this. Like, what? Dr. Welsing was stockpiling. He's here studying his niggers and studying Dr. Welsing for their debate. They're like, man, next. So can we get these audio cassettes digitized? Yes. Let's get those too. Let's get all of these as well. That was like last time at Stanford before vanishing, and at the same time where I'm grasping like, wow, there's a lot of these white dudes here that were talking about like neuroscience and how we going to control the niggers from rioting and all the rest of it. And some of them with apparently CIA connections. These dudes have large files on Jonestown and the People's Temple. Like, dang, I wish Dr. Welsing had known this. I wish more black people were aware of this. That was making the best of the Friday, much as possible. Wrapped up a little bit earlier than I anticipated. That was one of the first days I was actually able to get back to my hotel room at like 4. I think most of the days I would get up at 6, if not earlier, leaving when it was still dark to get down so I could be at Stanford or Berkeley, before the library or whatever opened. That Friday was one of the few days I could wrap up early, get back early, sleep. I was just exhausted because it was just doing all that and traveling and being away from home for so long. It was exhausting. It was grueling. It certainly was stressful. But wow, best travel experience ever, bar none. I could have seen Dave Chappelle that weekend, the last weekend that I was there. Dave Chappelle was in Oakland, but this was not a vacation, so I had no thought process of, let me see all the cool shows I can catch while I'm, in California. But had I looked at the calendar a little bit ahead, I could have caught Dave Chappelle in Oakland before I was headed out. But I had to be content with going to nab more information from San Francisco's public library, which I did. I had gaps in my Black Panther archives. They have the full Black Panther newspaper at the San Francisco's main library. They have it digital, and then they have a bound archive, of course, on the 6th floor that you cannot check out as well. But I had gaps in that as well that I was able to fill in, where they had more articles about Jonestown and the trial of Dan White in '79 that I missed out on. Got that. Was able to go back to Berkeley Bowl as well, to Yellow Watermelon again, and then headed out Sunday morning. I would be remiss because one of the things I did Sunday morning before exiting, I went back to the farmer's market, of course, but I went out on Embarcadero, and that's one of the things I would have done if it had not been a business trip. If I had just been on vacation, I would have kicked it on Embarcadero, because my hotel was like 2 blocks from Embarcadero. People don't know that's like the main, what shall I say? They have lots of piers, restaurants. I even thought it was so funny. I had to hear Mae Brussel, Dan White was going to get a restaurant on Pier 39. I literally was like 5 minutes from Pier 39, literally. Anyway, but they have lots of piers where you can just walk by the water, and it's real touristy. They have bars, restaurants, just lots of tourist attractions. They do have a farmer's market if you go down a little bit further, but you can see the Bay Bridge, you can see Alcatraz. If you're at the right spot, you can see both the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge. But I went out to walk that. Like, if I had been there like just vacation, I would have went down there and kicked it tough, because they have so many spots where you can take pictures, and just like cool spots where you can go sit by the water and look at the Bay Bridge or look at the Golden Gate Bridge, paint Jim Jones going across the Bay Bridge like I talked about. They have so many spots that are like that, especially farmers market. You can go get whatever and hang out and chill. But I walked along the Embarcadero, and from the day I arrived in San Francisco, literally, I saw Waymo autonomous vehicles. No passengers, just riding around the city, doing whatever. I guess waiting for people to call them or whatever they do when they're not in use. It freaked me out. I knew about this. I assumed that they had these in San Francisco, but I hadn't seen them. They are ubiquitous in San Francisco. And it just, it's like, what is this, man? Are they like riding around collecting data? I think they have cameras on them. It really bothered me seeing them. Now, I've talked about these cars for years, and I'd said previously, I think they'll be here soon. And I said, hey, I think these vehicles will be safer than people because people have a really low concern with driving safely. You have a lot of motorists, white and non-white. That's not a concern at all. I'm watching TV on my phone. I'm drag racing. I'm drunk. I'm doing drugs, maybe a combination, of all four as I'm driving. There's no, that's not even in the ballpark in terms of having correct intentions about driving safely. So it's such a low bar. That's what I've said for years. Literally. This happened last Friday. Last 3 days I was in San Francisco. I'm at the intersection of Columbus and Union. Beautiful park right there. You can see Coit Tower, North Beach area, close to Chinatown. I'm going across in the intersection and I have the right of way in the crosswalk. Waymo begins coming towards me, but driving safely, reasonable speed for an intersection. I guess becomes aware that I'm in the intersection, slows well in advance, allows me to cross safely. Seconds later, white female motorist comes barreling around. Whoa, almost ran that nigga over. That is exactly what I have been saying. I would trust if it's somebody going to hit me, it's not going to be the Waymo. It's going to be a white person or a non-white person, whatever. They're looking like they're talking because it was Friday night. They could have been drunk, high, all of the above, not paying attention, watching TV, telling racist jokes, all the above. Either way, speeding, and it was wet, so you're supposed to be going a little bit slower than anyway, but almost ran me down in the crosswalk where I had the right of way with the light and all. That is about what I would expect. So it did weird me out for sure, but full honesty, that did happen, and I was never in any danger from the Waymo autonomous vehicles. In fact, before I left, I stepped out in the street to take a picture of one. I was on the curb. Now, I wasn't in front of the self-driving vehicle, but I just stepped off the curb to take a photo. It would not budge until I stepped back on the sidewalk. They still weirded me out. There's so many of them. Like sometimes it would be one autonomous vehicle right behind another one. Like it's a lot of them in San Francisco. And when I looked online, it said they were in LA too. I did not see a one of these in LA. Now I was only there for 8 days. I told you I saw them immediately. I was in San Francisco for like 2 hours and I had already seen 2 or 3 of the Waymos. I did not see any of these at any time while I was in LA. Anywho, let's see. So much more I could say about Jonestown and the whole California experience. Could really break that down into all the films that I saw and that whole experience, and then the research component of it. I would only say that I hope everybody, if you're serious, counter racism, replace white supremacy with justice, turn off the television and learn. Like when Fuller says, pick something constructive, an event or subject matter, and you want to learn as much as you can about that, whatever subject matter is. Man, I hope everybody who is serious about counter-racism finds something that you are that motivated about where, yes, I'm willing to travel or whatever it is, put up with all kinds of stress to see if I can learn something constructive about this that can be applied to racism, white supremacy. That I think is more in the direction of universal man than more in the direction of universal woman, universal man than sitting around watching television. Facts. Any television about anything. If anything, I'm going to use television to get motivated so I can do some serious research and study of this, which should entail many more mediums than a screen. TV, YouTube. Anyway, I can't say enough. Research local history. Like I said, if you're in California, man, you should be a Jonestown expert. If you have to start late, oh well. I'm going to like I said, you could just go to the San Francisco Public Library. If you don't live close to Stanford, don't worry about it. If you don't live close to Berkeley, don't worry about it. If you don't live close to California, don't worry about it. You can read the New York Times. You can get the LA Times online. I wouldn't get really any state in the U.S. where you live. I'm pretty sure you can go to a community college, your local library, you can get the New York Times. You can study Jonestown just from the New York Times, just from the Chicago Tribune, just from the Washington Post, just from the LA Times. It would be easy. Go to your library, access the archives. If you've never done that before, great time to still learning has many implications, right? You have offspring, beautiful opportunity to do it with your children because as I said, hey, first person that I met, he said, my 4-year-old son died in Guyana. For sure, something to teach black children about. They were big targets in all of this, apparently. Any hoodles, man, so much I could say. It's going so long, so much I could say, but wow, amazing experience. Best travel experience I've ever had. And I think because it was just about learning. It was not about I'm trying to go and have fun. I'm not trying to go and smoke weed. I'm not trying to go to this party. I'm not trying to go and see Dave Chappelle. It was I'm trying to get as much information, constructive, as possible while I'm here. That was how every day was planned, almost every minute of every day, to maximize the ability to acquire constructive information while I'm here. Maybe that's the way we should do all trips under the system of white supremacy racism, maximizing constructive information while we are here in a safe, manner, obviously. But man, amazing experience. I'm definitely a homebody. I'm certainly happy to be back home and with a plethora of fresh California produce. Like I said, when I was in LA, that was suffering. If it was reversed, like if I had to be in Los Angeles for 30 days and I was just going to be in San Francisco for 8 days, that would have been awful. Jesus, that would have been awful. But thankfully, it was the other way around and spectacular. And I was so constructive or timely with this, I missed a major weather event in Washington State where they had the bomb cyclone that knocked out electricity and all. Man, when we got here on Sunday, I looked down and I was like, man, that really looks like it could be snow on the ground. And we got close and I was like, oh Lord, I think that is snow. Like, man, that alone. To go, I didn't get stabbed, I didn't get robbed, they were not snorting or dealing cocaine outside my hotel room or the building or my room specifically. Like, safe, able to get constructive things done, and missed a blizzard, snowstorm, power outage while I was gone. Brilliant. Not to mention, the temperature did drop. I basically was there to see autumn come in full bloom for the Bay Area, but for the first 2 weeks that I was there, it was like summertime still, basically, especially in the East Bay. 70 degrees, sunny, people wearing flip-flops and shorts every day. I will take that over the Seattle weather, where it's in the 30s here now. Yes, I'm super glad I got to hang out in California for a month and enjoy heat and sunshine while it is getting cold and winter in Washington State. Yes, thankful. Any hoodles, we should be back neutralizing workplace racism tomorrow, kind of getting back on schedule with the broadcasting and do the compensatory call-in this Saturday. We'll put the book club back for next Thursday, but normal schedule 8 p.m. Eastern for Friday, and then 8 p.m. again for Saturday. Even like I said, Cal's listener went out and got kombucha tea and barbecue vegan sandwich. It was made from trumpet mushrooms. I'd been eating so many trumpet mushrooms before I left, so that was pretty wacky too. But the sandwich was amazing. Great kicking it with non-white people after the Kara Walker event at the museum as well. Just grand times through and through in California. We'll have to see how we can, starting to go through some of this information to kind of call out different, tidbits that I think are important. Maybe we can talk to some of the folks, all that good stuff. But yeah, amazing experience, more data, and even more to come. I put in requests for about a dozen documentaries. So if I'm able to acquire those, wow, what a haul. That would be the case even without those, but that would just add to it. Wow, what a haul. White people are not ignorant about racism. Not at all. And I did not talk to not one black person who worked at special collections. Not one. Every person that I spoke with who worked at special collections at all of the institutions that I visited, there were, I think, 3 people who would be classified as not white. None of them classified as black who worked at special collections. Maybe 4. I think they have 2 non-white people who do special collections at the San Francisco Main Library, and then 1 or 2 non-white people. I think there's 1 non-white person at Stanford who does special collections, and then 1 non-white person at the Berkeley Graduate Theology Library who does special collections. So it might be 4 in total, but overwhelmingly white people. The really sensitive data that you might be able to access publicly, kind of not black people. And like I said, I don't recall like bumping into one like black person at a library who's like, oh yeah, I'm the Jonestown expert and blah blah blah. Maybe that person exists. Maybe they were on vacation. Thanksgiving came up this week and all that, so maybe I just didn't meet them. But I did not get to talk to one person at a library or something who was like, yeah, I'm a Jonestown expert. I study this. I know everything, blah, blah, blah. That would have totally changed my experience, too, if I had been coming to research and you get to talk to someone who works at the library and they're an expert on this issue, so they can tell you extra places to go and all of that. I did not have that happen at all. Any hoodles. I'll double check, see folks have questions, thoughts to share. All of the California wackiness. Wow, it was just so much. I was so glad to get back just to relax a little bit of everything. It is, at least for me, as a privileged black male, it's a little bit stressful to be, like I said, gone for so long, to be able to relax a little bit more, to be in my own bed, got my Vitamix back, my own zip code, all of that, to relax a little bit. It is a lot to be gone relatively far for that long. But wow, what an experience. And I'm so glad I planned. I guess I could say that now. Plan to try to minimize as many problems as you can. Plan as much as possible in advance. I was able to benefit from that. I think all of the events and lectures and things that I went to had tickets in advance. Everything, I think, except Erykah Badu, because I didn't know about that at the time. And I guess Dave Chappelle, if you want to add that. But plan in advance. I had planned the 40-mile train route from San Francisco to Palo Alto. I had planned all that in advance and everything. So do as much planning so you can minimize surprises. I mean, that is impossible with life, weather, all the rest of it, but try as best you can to minimize surprises that you encounter as you're going to be out and about doing things, so that you can kind of have a schedule to maximize your use of time and energy. I think I was able to do that daily, basically. I don't recall, like I said, except for that day where they reneged for the food summit, I did not oversleep. I had double alarms set. I was on business, regardless if I had to be up at 6 o'clock, 6:30, 5:45, whatever it is. Let's get on the grind and get what we came to get. That was my attitude from the beginning of the trip. Like I said, when I went to USC, before checking into the hotel, that set the tone for the entire California experience. Let's get this information. This is business, counter-racist business. Let's be about that, and then we'll relax and rest up once we get back to Seattle. Let's see. Folks have question, comment about all the time in California. I guess it would even be, is it worth it to disrupt the broadcast? And people say, man, you could have been on and broadcasting and reporting things. That would be something to ponder on as well. Let's see. Our caller, 6028. Question, comment about the Sojourn. Hope you made it through the so-called Thanksgiving madness safely. Put those chitlins down.
No chitlins here, Gus. Peaceful greetings. Great to hear that you're safe, that you returned safely back home, and to follow Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's quote, "Reading is more important than television." I read 2 books, C.O.W.S, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s by Mr. Tom O'Neill. But I read that earlier in the year, so I don't remember a lot of it. But they mentioned Jim Jones as well in that book, so you might want to check that out. I also, I just finished The Message by Mr. Coates. I'm going to leave it at that. I also went to a film festival in the middle of the year, this summer, and I saw over 30 short films and 4 documentaries. And one of the documentaries was called Guardian of the Flame by Daniel Wolf. It was about Katrina victims who were trying to keep the tradition going of Mardi Gras with sewing up the costumes for Mardi Gras, and I guess also the artwork, and just trying to keep that tradition going. They mentioned racism. This was my first time experiencing a film festival, so I really didn't know what to expect. I knew that, you're going to watch a film and they were going to have a section where they were going to interview people, but I didn't know, how they were going to go about it. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching the films, and then, at the end of the film, the people who, were in the film or the directors, they would step out, and that's where the interview part would take place, in the hallway. But they would keep playing films, and I didn't want to miss the films. So sometimes I just stayed, and sometimes I stepped out. You have any questions?
I'm a little rusty getting my mute and all that since I haven't been broadcasting, but got it. That is one. I think you can hear me now. Okay. One, when I went to the film festivals, I didn't do the shorts. Not that I, have scorn or anything about that with them. It's just I would always miss them for some reason. I had planned to see, they would do, because she said, they'll show 10 or 15 short, because they're small. They're 10-minute films. They'll put all back to back, at the film festivals. I had planned to go see a grouping of shorts both in Seattle and in Los Angeles, but I kept missing them. It would end up being a feature-length film that I really wanted to see, or something else, or I would just get bumped off, but I would always miss them. That is a little odd. She's saying they would have the filmmakers present, but are still showing films and such. I've never seen, like I said, I've never been to the shorts, but I know for the feature-length films, they'll turn off the credits. The Order, I saw that in LA. Filmmakers and everybody were there. They normally would show the whole credits and then have the filmmakers do that. They didn't do that. They showed maybe 30 seconds of the credits, and then boop, they cut the music off, shut all that down, and we don't just focus on the, people talking. Like Q&A, you can ask questions and all the rest of it. So that's a little odd to still have stuff playing, and I don't know what to do about that. The C.O.W.S book, I've not read it, but I think Jeff Ginn did that book which is interesting because he also has written about the People's Temple. I think he has a more one of the more recent well-known books about the People's Temple. Jeff Ginn is a white man, I believe, unless I'm misinformed, and he's in a number of the more recent documentary films. I remember Jeff Ginn. He said he was talking about why they went to Guyana. He said it's socialist, it's English speaking, and it's mostly non-white. He doesn't mention anything about CIA operations in this area, nor the CIA relationships that he talks about with Charles Manson that would make it easy for Jim Jones and company to smuggle in drugs, weapons, where it doesn't have to go through customs and all the rest of it. He doesn't mention any of that. It's just, no, it's social, whatever that means, socialist. But yes, I'm familiar with Jeff. I think he had a documentary film that he was like executive producer on or something that came out this year on the People's Temple. I might be mistaken about that, but I think it just was because they were talking about it at the cemetery just for the memorial last week. Anywho, reading more important than watching television, and for sure, Charles Manson, that's another one. Racks of information. That's a whole nother month of information on Charles Manson and what was he doing and why was all that allowed in California. Any hoodles. Much obliged for the well wishes, ma'am. Was that it on the film festival? Were you gonna add anything else?
Okay, so real quick, they mentioned Guardians of the Flame, the one about Katrina and the Mardi Gras. One of the victims, a grandmother, she mentioned having watched or witnessing Black people being hung from trees. And the term racism was used, not a definition, but the term racism was used. There's another film called The Black Spades. It's about a gang, so-called gang in New York, and the history of that. And they said that how they were able to break them up was Pathmark, a supermarket owned by a white person, was like, I'm tired of, the Black kids stealing from the supermarket. He met up with the leader of the gang and was like, what could I do about it? And the leader said, for lack of better terms, he said, well, give them jobs. If you want them to stop stealing from your store, give them jobs. So, okay, give you some applications. You're going to make them all bad boys. And that, they're basically saying like that was what brought down or kind of diminished the criminal aspect. But when you were a Black Spade, they had a code. You couldn't do drugs. I thought that was constructive. They also would help, the elderly or people or whatever. The reason why they had to, the reason why they had to create this gang is because of white gangs, which there were over 100 white gangs in New York. And every time that these kids would take a bus to go from school to home, the white gangs would come and overturn the bus or throw rocks at it. So they were like, to protect, younger people, the kids in elementary school. That's why they created this gang. There was a story about a guy who's trying to become a rapper. His name is Bino. I'm just picking out, of course, I'm not going to talk about all of the films or whatever, but I'm trying to think of, I wanted to focus on the ones that talked about or mentioned racism. That one, the one about Bino and the rapper, he was, I think he got into trouble and he was on parole. So you're following his life, until he gets to the point where he has to go see his parole officer, and she says, well, whether he's going to stay on parole or not. That was interesting. Short film. There was one called The Audition. The Audition was about a cameraman who was trying to, move up in the industry, become, I guess, a director or an actor or something like that. A producer invites him to a hotel and has the cameraman sleep with, for lack of better terms, with a white woman in front of him. And after it's done, the Black guy is like, the cameraman, it was a Black guy, he says, well, am I going to get any more jobs or, any more work or whatever? And the producer's like, yeah. But this other couple, they want to meet you or whatever. And he's like, oh, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to move up in the world. Now it's about a white producer, lying to a black cameraman. The director, after the film, this is one of the interviews I was able to watch. After the film, then everybody stepped outside for the interview. And the director, what is his name? Do I have his name? I don't think I have his name. But he said this was a true story. This is based off of his experience of trying to become a director. And I was like, wow, this is sad. This is sad. And it basically made it look like rape in a sense. So it was like, wow, this is sad. There was another story real quick called White Lens, and it was about a father. It's a silent film. It was about a father wanting his son, a black father wanting his son to cut his locks. And there was no talking in the film. It was like all of maybe 3 minutes. It was very creative how they did it. And there was a point where the father dressed up as a cop to show his son, like, look, if you don't cut your locks or whatever, you're going to come in contact with a cop, and the cop is going to shoot you, or the cop is going to harm you. So this is why you need to do it. It was just creative how they did that. Another film called Mama is about a white woman who gave up her black child to adoption, and this was back in like the 50s or 60s or something like that. So they weren't able to trace the kid, so she wasn't able to find him. She don't know where he's at or anything like that. Yeah, that was short. You have any questions?
Did you get to ask the filmmakers any questions, or you said they were just watching them be asked questions?
Okay, so because it was my first time, I was just kind of observing, looking or whatever. There's quite a few people there, like in the front or whatever. So I was like kind of just observing because I didn't know like how does this go, like how do we ask questions or whatever. But yes, I did. So the last film was about feminism. It was called Media Changed the World. Feminism. And let me get it right. How feminist media changed the world. And let me go back a little bit. That first one, Guardian of the Flame, about the Katrina victims trying to keep Mardi Gras, most of the audience was 98% white. So correct. White people are not ignorant. I think it was only 2 black people. That was myself and another person. Everybody else was white. This film was a mixture of white people and black people. I think it was more white, though. Yeah. So I was able to ask this director 2 things from this film I want to throw out real quick that I can remember. Because they mentioned racism and white supremacy in the film. I was like, oh, this is perfect. What's your definition, this, that, and the other? So I started writing out a list of questions, right? And 2 things about the film. So the white feminists, there was a group of white feminists, and then black women, they had a group also of feminists. And, hello?
Sorry, you said they had a group that surprised me. Sorry. Okay,
so the white feminists, they would have they would show these images, and they would have one black female within the group, one or whatever. Every once in a while they'll flash, right? So the white feminists, they were getting their money together, and they created this magazine or something like that. Somebody stole the money. They handed it over to somebody, trusting somebody, and somebody stole the money. So the black feminists, right? They have their own little group. So they tried to come up with a little magazine or something. The black feminists were only able to produce about 6 episodes of this black magazine for feminism. The white women, they started the magazine in 1960. And even though, the money was stolen, this, that, and the other, they were able to continue this magazine until 2011. It's probably still going on now. So I thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow. So I was going to ask her that question, how come the black feminists, how come they weren't able to continue their magazine? And how does, I had a whole host of questions. So I was able to ask her what was her definition of racism, since she mentioned it or whatever. And she was like, you're asking a really tough question. And she was, ooh, like fumbling over her words or whatever. And then she's like, she tried slipping in like, oh, you know. I'm like, no, but you mentioned it in your film. What's your definition? Still said buckets of words. Didn't really answer the question. I got to ask her another question. What did I ask her? I think, like, how does this film help eliminate the system? Or what did you hope that this film would do, or something like that? And at that moment, two black females came up, and they were trying to promote their podcast or radio station or something like that. So they interjected, which saved her. I was like, oh. And I'm like, I'm not going to stand here and argue with, these two black females or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stand and wait. So then they started asking her questions, and then it was like a group conversation. I was like, oh, this is perfect. Oh, this is just awesome. Yeah. Yeah, so that was the end of that. Any questions?
Fascinating. That's kind of the main one right there. Like, I'd say for anybody, anytime, if it's, that particularly for those film festivals, I'd say that's, the reason to go, because a lot of times you can look at the schedule, or at least since I've been several times now, you can often look at the schedule and it'll say if the filmmakers or actors or whatever, if they're going to be there. And that way you can say, oh, I'll already be thinking, maybe even in advance, what would I like to ask? And then as you're watching them, oh yeah, I'm going to think of at least one question. If I have to have a pen and pad ready and whatever. Oh, they mentioned racism. What's your definition of racism? I'm going to have at least one question. And I said for years, man, take advantage, especially if it's white people or white people present, but especially if you get to question a white person. Man, take advantage. Fuller, Dr. Welsing talked about that all the time, man. That right there is counter-racism 101. Asking questions. Anytime you get an opportunity, if you're by yourself. She told us, unless I was doing a poor job listening, she said the Katrina film, it wasn't even that many black people there. So I don't know if the filmmakers were there or not, but you don't even have black people with a chance to ask questions. I don't know if the filmmakers are white or black either, but still. The other film about the so-called feminism, whatever, she said there's more black people there. But man, take advantage, especially if it's white people. I'm never, excited about, as she said, question other confused victims. I'm not so, whatever. But someone classified as white, oh yeah, get them out there and question away. You did a film and you're talking about racism, you should be able to answer questions. You wrote a book, you're talking about racism, you should be able to answer a question. Or you wrote a magazine, what she said, she had a rack of questions about the funding, how they get the, great. Use that brain computer. And I say that for and really, you can even be thinking in advance. Which, Black History Month and all that, Dr. King holiday, beginning of the year, they will have all kinds of tacky, lame events for people to come out. How she said, how's this project supposed to help us end racism? And she said, it got interrupted. That's a common one too. When you go out in public and victims interrupt. And I don't even know, like, how is that even facilitated? Because I'm reflecting on times that I've been at the festival where the filmmakers and people have been there. And so somebody in the audience, maybe me, asks a question. It wouldn't even be allowed for like somebody else to leap out to promote their podcast or whatever. Like, I asked specifically for the filmmaker or actor or whoever to, respond to whatever I wanted them to talk about with the film. Who are you? I didn't ask you, Keisha. So I don't care about your podcast. I wanted to hear from the film. Like, come on, man. Do a better job facilitating. You can't be letting people just leap in and talk. Anyway, but that's so standard right there. When a white person gets asked a serious question about racism, victims interrupt to answer for, like, come on. Hey, man, that big lesson from California. White people are not ignorant about racism. They don't need no help. They don't need us answering for them, saving them. Let them in. That can be hard sometimes in public because, man, non-white, we just got to interject. Like, back up off that white person now. You being a little surly with your questions, sister. Back up now. That's sort of indirectly addressed. A lot of times that is real willful that we, behave in that manner. Sometimes it is a subconscious thing, but man, not supposed to be questioning white people seriously. Gus T says that is exactly what we are supposed to be doing. Hopefully we've been modeling that at the cows here for 15, going on 16 years. Any hoodles, grand job asking questions at the festival, and the reading. She gave us some books before she started off with all of that. Keep that up, ma'am. Share, let us know, especially if you get to ask questions. Let us know, and or if you get any other quality books to share, let us know. We basically been here for 3 hours. Just wanted to let folks know what the whole, I don't know, I was going to say 30 days, but it was longer than that. Like, woof. Let folks know what we were up to. Hopefully constructive, especially once I have some time to kind of sit and go through all of the just racks and racks and racks of information to go through all of that. It was a whale of an experience, best travel experience ever. Hope everybody finds subject matter where they are excited and looking forward to an opportunity to learn and do research. You don't have to travel like that. See, the young lady that just called us, she said she found things that were happening, going to the film festival, told us about that book that she found. You can take advantage of things that are happening right around you. The film festival that I went to was right here in Seattle. I didn't have to go to LA. That was just, extra based on going to the one in Seattle. But you can research right where you are. That was said literally in one of the lectures I was at. It does take resources and time and all that to, make some sort of, sojourn to wherever. But man, take advantage of what you have where you are. Community college, local library, whatever. Take advantage and do some serious study, research. Reading is more important than watching TV, especially in 2025. That's it. Man, it is holiday weekend. I should have done it at the beginning. Told young lady I'm, bad practice. I haven't got it together. Rusty, as they say. It's so-called holiday weekend. Sobriety checkpoints will be out. San Francisco, Seattle, wherever you happen to be. Sobriety would be best. If you have younger folks who just started driving, this would be a great time to remind them sobriety would be best. If you're going out and about this weekend, really all the way through Monday, hey, put that seatbelt on. I would discourage being out late. When I say late, after 10:30 p.m. Get wherever you're going to go. If you want to hang out with your friends and do whatever, get to one location and park it. We are here until the next day. You do not want to be out and about 11 p.m., midnight this weekend. You are asking for trouble. Especially you want to take a little sip because the holidays, get that little eggnog with a shot and then okay, park it. Sobriety. Hey, call the Waymo. They got tons of autonomous drivers. They will get you where you got to go safely. Sobriety would be best. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person help us work on our questions for white people. No gossiping, no name calling, no throwaway offspring. Put that on Jim Jones. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
Yeah. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.